Hey everybody, this is part 2 of a 2-part series with my friend Ninja, a former CIA and Delta Force operator. In this episode, you are going to hear the inside scoop of a lot of the things that went on inside CIA when Ninja and I were both there. It's a raw, honest discussion that is very rare. You're probably never going to get this much of an inside in that organization. Again, I hope you all enjoy it. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Check out the Clips channel if you haven't checked that out. Leave us a review on Spotify and iTunes. We're kind of lacking on the Spotify reviews, so if you guys could help us out, I would really appreciate it. So would my team. Sign up for the Vigilance Elite newsletter. Gummy bears are coming back. That's how you're going to find out where the link is to buy them. All right, love you all. Cheers. Enjoy this episode. I'll see you soon. Previously on the Shawn Ryan Show. You're down in Panama, Operation Just Cause. This is when we pulled Noriega out, correct?
Yep. Jump out of the bush, out of the jungle, point my gun at him, and I said, "Get on the ground, mother." We've decided to take you on as apprentice, which means you get to go to the operator training course. But you do a lot of shooting in OTC. I mean, you were dumping some rounds in OTC to get good with a pistol and a rifle.
You're showing up at Delta. You guys took losses. Did you take in any losses?
No. That was the big one.
So before we get into the contracting days in the early part of Iraq, let's take a quick break.
Sound good?
So we left off. You just started working for Triple Canopy. I think you said it was around 03?
Late 03 is when I was at a unit function, and that's when the founders and all that had a great idea to put together. It was Triple Canopy, a security company, and
Were those former unit guys
yep,
that started that?
yep.
Okay.
And there were some guys from the counterparts in the Navy to help, manage or staff the hierarchy of the company at the time. So, great group of guys. and I'd always said if I was going to do this kind of thing that, there's a bunch of clowns out there, a bunch of companies that just running amok, and I wasn't going to do that. Heard this pitch, and I was like, well, who's in it? Who's it going to be? Is it just going to be in namesake and have a couple guys at the top to have the name, or? And they said, nope, it's going to be, former unit guys, or former Tier 1 guys, not just the unit, our Navy counterparts. Sawman was one of them. He was on the crew, so got to work with him again. Yeah, there's a bunch of good guys on the initial crew. Yeah, and then by 04, so go to Chicago where we were at the time, headquarters, that's where it started. And then all of 04, or most of 04, I was in Iraq, spinning that thing up, interesting in the contracting at the time, plus my previous experience was military experience, and I'm a private contractor. Very eye-opening, not the coverage and the backstop you have when you're in the military. There's no helicopters and all that stuff coming. Depends on where you are, but you have to coordinate for it, and you're civilian, so military comes first, right? So
Pretty
it's
low on
understanding
priority
all
list.
that, right? That was good to know, interesting to find out all those kind of nuances about the whole contracting world. And I was just going to be a site manager, get a group of guys and run a protection detail and all those kind of things. Ended up to be a little bit more than that, but I was fine with it. Had a little army up north Iraq eventually.
Nice.
Yeah, trained them and static security, a guard force, plus a protective detail and all that kind of stuff. Yep. So I felt, I needed to do something for the global war on terror. I got out right before as that was happening, so jumped back on the bandwagon. Then it's good pay. It's like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to Iraq.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then found out, as we're piecing things together in Chicago, and what do we need? Gear, equipment, spare parts, accessories for AKs, and all those kinds of things. Whatever kind of weapon systems we're going to get in country, and all those kind of things. We ended up driving in from Jordan, down Highway 1 from Jordan all the way to Baghdad. We actually hired taxis that came from Baghdad, came out to get us, and we're driving back with some folks that were there. So they knew the area, they knew Baghdad and the streets and all that stuff. So they were already in Baghdad. They came out to get us, drove in, long drive. The driver stopped at one point and said, we're not going any further. We happened to be right outside of, right in between, we're on Highway 1 between Ramadi and Fallujah. And they pulled over, and it was like, well, what are we doing? They all got out of the car, went across the street, and sat down. And we're like, what do we got a sit-in going on? What's going on? And, it was the whole thing about getting guns, too. I mean, we weren't going to get guns till we got across the border in Iraq, where we're going to meet some guy, bona fides thing going on, a little black market stuff going on, or whatever was going on. It was all planned to get guns when we got inside, cross the border, stop, get guns, get ammo, and continue on to Baghdad, stopping between Ramadi and Fallujah. It was all we could do to convince them. They didn't want to go to Baghdad because it was too dangerous. And we're like, well, you probably should have told us that to begin with, right? Because we're not staying here on Highway 1 between Ramadi and Fallujah.
Yeah, no shit.
At that time, not a good place to hang out.
There wasn't a whole lot of good places to hang out in Iraq in 04.
Yeah. So that was another...
Depending on what you're doing.
Intro to contracting 101 right there. We eventually ended up convincing them it was the right thing to do for their country and everything else, and fed them a bunch of crap, and they bought it and continued to drive into Baghdad for us. And the thing in you can see, off of Highway 1 where we were, you can see some of Fallujah on the horizon off in the distance in the desert. And one of the things was, so there was a gal with me driving in my Suburban. They were Suburban white and orange taxis you typically see in Baghdad, or anywhere in that region. She had to go to the bathroom, right? And it was a gas station, but just like Iraq, it wasn't any normal. It wasn't gas. There was gas pumps. They hadn't been used in probably decades. But they were just, cans of gas all over the place. So it was a gas station. It was an Iraqi gas station. She had to go to the bathroom. And I told her before, I said, don't leave without me. And if you have to go to the bathroom, whatever it is, if I have to go to the bathroom, you're coming with me and I'm going with you. We're not separating. So we stopped there. And I'm trying to convince our driver, and a couple of the drivers that, hey, we need to, do this for your country, and we're here for you, and all this other stuff. And I turn around, and they started, okay, we'll do it, but we need more money. Yeah, it's like, all right, we'll get you more money when we get there. And I turn around, I was like, where's this gal? She was a contractor at the Baghdad International Airport with one of the other companies. She was part of one of the companies that went in to try to manage the infrastructure of the airport.
Okay.
Right. But that obviously didn't go yet. It wasn't time for that yet. So Triple Canopy on the ground picked her up to work for us in whatever capacity to train to handle women Iraqis for the Guard Force stuff and all that other stuff.
For those of you who've never heard of Khost, it's a premium electrolyte drink. It's loaded with key components like magnesium, calcium, and potassium that many other sports drinks don't offer. Khost contains half the sugar and 3 times the electrolytes compared to some of those other traditional sports drinks, without any artificial dyes or sweeteners. And as a parent, that's really important to me. Where I personally align with Khost is through their relationship with the military. They formulated their products to fit requirements and support our military in training and in deployments. They are now available to hydrate military installations globally. If you want to support a small brand that puts their money where their mouth is, then drink Khost. You can use their store locator on their website to find a store near you, or you can purchase directly from www.drinkhoist.com, where they offer military and first responders 15% off every single day. For your first order on their website, be sure to use my code Shawn, and you'll get 20% off. Looking to get your financial future organized? Well, if you don't have life insurance yet, that should be at the top of your list. Fabric by Gerber Life is the easy one-stop shop you need with life insurance and other family finance solutions all in one place. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Guys, I have a son, I have a wife, and I always worry about their financial future if I were to disappear from this earth, and that is where Fabric Life Insurance can help you. You could be offered coverage instantly with no health exam required. Protect your family today with Fabric by Gerber Life. Apply today in just 10 minutes at meetfabric.com/Shawn. That's meetfabric.com/Shawn. MEET fabric.com/Shawn. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions.
She walked off, and it was like one of those things like, I'm a contractor now. It's like, now, should I leave her on her own because she should know better? Or should I, go try to find out where she is and rescue her because I don't know where she's at. So time and place where we're at, Ramadi and Fallujah, she's going to be high dollar to somebody, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the only other place in the middle of this desert where the drivers are across the street huddled up talking about stuff, and line of Suburbans packed with all of our gear in it. There's only that one gas station part of it. And I was thinking, and I see there's a couple of the Iraqis standing around. I was like, there's no way she would have went over there. Because it's safer here. There's Americans here, right?
Yeah.
And she knows this. Well, I saw her come from around the building.
Oh, my.
And I was like, oh, here we go. I was like, well, I have this brand new AK, but I don't know if it fires. I haven't shot it on a range to know if it fires accurately. So I'm not comfortable taking a shot. It's, 150 or something like that away from me. And I was like, well, this is all I got. So this is my intro to contracting in Iraq thing. And she keeps walking. And I was like, all right. She makes it to the truck, and I scream at her and yell at her. It's like, don't ever do that again. And she got her butt hurt a little bit. And I was like, well, you realize where we're at, right? And she's like, yeah, we're on the road to Baghdad. And I was like, so off in the distance on the horizon, see that over there? That's Fallujah. We just passed Ramadi back here. Those towns sound familiar to you? She's like, yeah. She's like, we're not going in there. I was like, yeah, exactly. But that's who's here. And so she got it. She said, I'm sorry. She apologized, all kinds of stuff. And all worked out. We got to the green zone. To the house we were near gate 12, I think it was the furthest down towards Route Irish. Like you passed that, the tank that was parked out there, and then you were on Route Irish getting some. So that's where we were at. The unit guys were there, task force, Brown, the Rangers were there, SAIC was there. That's where we started base of operations, just starting to get contracts everywhere.
Nice. So at what point, because that was State Department contracts, correct? For the most part?
The CPA at the time.
Okay.
So Coalitional Provisional Authority. So State Department, but it was the CPA, all those contracts that they had everywhere. And they're starting to push out now to Sulaymaniyah up north and all the other towns from Baghdad. They're starting to branch out down south in Ramallah to Lille and all those other places. They're trying to get something stabilized, trying to get a presence there in those places, which didn't work out so well initially. But
How long were you working with Triple Canopy before
Stay with them a
CIA
year.
picked you up?
Yep, stay with them for a year. Most of that was getting the bases and as the contracts would come down, we were there waiting on, okay, let's get a team and go. Like I ended up going to Suli, but in the interim on Baghdad, I'm going to Ramadi, helping that team out to get spun up. Went down to Lille South to start help with that one, just to spin it up. I wasn't supposed to go to all these places. I was just going because I'm there and to help out at that point. And then I'll come back to Baghdad and wait for another contract so I can take a team and go somewhere else. It was interesting in Ramadi. So the Guard, National Guard, Army National Guard was out there, and they were doing the escorting for the CPA folks going into Ramadi to do their, diplomatic stuff. And so our team was partnering up with those guys. So we'd run limo, follow, and then we'd have Army vehicles in front leading out and then a gun truck in the back. And when I was out there doing that, we go downtown to the governor's mansion, and we're doing site surveys. We're getting the lay of the land and figuring out what's where and stuff like that. I got a picture of this guy. It's funny. They're from New Jersey. And I hear this one block down, and I hear this firefight going on. And I was looking at another side of the building, and I'm on top of the rooftop of this 3 or 4 story government building. And I turn around, I was like, I'm waiting for the guard guys to have some kind of movement, right? I turn around and they're not moving. And it was E6, I think, Staff Sergeant. I yelled down the stairway. I was like, hey, get up here to the other Triple Canopy guys. I said, hey, get up here. There's a firefight down the street. Just to watch it, maybe participate in it, something, right?
Yeah, who knows?
In case they start coming this way, then we're up there ready, right? They had the guard guys, they were improving their positions on the rooftop. They had sandbags, and that's what they were doing while we were waiting for the meetings to go on. We were doing all the sites, the surveys, the mapping of the area, and getting contact information, range cards, the whole thing on the rooftop. And I went downstairs to see how much time we had for the meeting, and it was still a good 45 minutes or an hour. So, and then right then, I hear the firefight pick up tempo a little bit. So I go running back upstairs to the rooftop, and I passed the staff sergeant, and he's going downstairs. And he looks at me. He's like, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" I was like, "Hey, there's a firefight going on." He's like, "I know." He said, "That's why I'm going downstairs." And he told his guys to lay low. He get below. There was a knee wall on top of this rooftop, and then there's sandbags and everything. Decent fighting positions, and the firefight, picks up sound and amount of ammo that's being expended, and all we're doing, it's the next street over. So we're starting to, you can only see the misses and the hits on the buildings like a block up the street down. We're looking down this one street, and occasionally we see somebody passing by, and then somebody passing by the other way. It's like, what in the heck is going on? And one guy probably saw somebody on the rooftop that we were at, and he rounded the corner and took a shot, right? And immediately there's dudes, so we're now in charge of well, we're not in charge of them. We're saying, hey man, they got saws and all that stuff on the rooftop. It's like, hey, could you just please point your gun in that direction if somebody starts shooting this way? Can you just help us out a little bit? And that one dude turned around the corner. It's all he was doing is it's an Iraqi, right? So he's running the corner, shooting his gun, and then he's going to run across. He doesn't know. I'm guessing he didn't know who was where. He's just going to shoot and then run, because that's what they do, right? Just around the corner, shoot, and then run across the street. And that's all I said. It's like, hey, get that guy. And he's like, really? Like, he was excited, this PFC. He's like, really? I was like, yeah, get that dude. Get him. He's like, as he's running across the street, he must have just, I don't know, emptied it, half of his drum. Because it was a short window of time that we even saw this dude out in the open. And he was way behind, trying to catch up. And I was like, all right, good job, man. And he's like, did I get him? And I didn't want to tell him no. It's like, did I get him? Yeah, you got him. Good job. Yeah, that was interesting. The whole time of the contracting was interesting. And then mostly it was dealing with, or eventually running into like Army guys in our cars, right? So Beamers, IED cars. We're driving around IED cars, V-bids, and that's what they're thinking we are when we're rolling up to them. It's like, oh my God, back off. Was another thing, and when I finally got, and we were going to the bases. One of the bases up north between Baghdad and Bakuba, we would go to that base because that's where all the caches were. They'd go raid places, the big army, and that was like the processing place for all the ammo. So we were getting guns and ammo from those guys, stuff that they had captured on targets and stuff like that. It wasn't processed through the system yet. And I finally get, there's Tikrit and there's Erbil. Those contracts are coming down. Then I finally get one, and that's in Suli. I was like, Suli's cool. It's on north of the Green Line. That'd be a cool place to go. I'll go train the Army up there. 10th Special Forces Group was up there. The Sergeant Major at the time was a former unit guy. And it was a good deal. On the way there, we have to pass through Bakuba to stop there because we have a team there to drop off some mail and some more money and stuff for them. And one of the, so there's a traffic circle near where they had the, I don't know, whatever you call it, the CPA compound. And the big mill was moving. So you got these big old, what do they call them? The MRAPs, right?
Yeah.
They're rolling through, and they're rolling through this circle. And I already, American flag, orange panel, all the stuff to the rear gunner on the rear vehicle. As he's looking, straight 6 o'clock, he's got 6 for the convoy he's in. And American flag, hey, we're friendly. And he gave us a thumbs up. And we just were following them around the circle. And when they get around the circle, they were going, out 12 o'clock. And we're going to continue out 9 to go to the compound, which is right quarter mile within this circle. I mean, we're almost there. And I had a local driver with me from Baghdad. Spoke pretty good English, but I was taking him up to be a linguist for me. But, driving skills.
Yeah.
It's like that's all we had. So the other American in the other vehicle had another local guy from Baghdad. He's driving. And it was just us two separate vehicles, trunk full of money to go hire local guards, and vet them, train them, all this other stuff, and then pay them salaries and stuff like that. It's crazy. But we're dropping off money for the Bakuba team. And we go behind we're behind the convoy. We're, pretty good distance. I mean, we're enough to where he can keep seeing us, the rear gunner. And in the circle, though, half of their convoy gets through. And ID in one of the bricks that make up the circle, right? So the huge blocks that they have that make those things. So apparently they embed something in one of those and blew it up, cranked it off of one of the MRAPs. And at the time, it was either, initiation. That was either initiation and then a follow-on, ambush kind of thing. So me sitting there, us sitting there in the back of this formation wasn't a good place to be because it was a thin skin. What do we have? A BMW 350 or something series car. It's a fast car, but we don't need to be here. Yeah. And so what I decided to do we couldn't get over the curbs because they're 18-inch curbs, right, with this BMW. So I motioned to this guy, and I would told him, we rehearsed a couple things before we left. Gas, gas, gas means step on the gas and keep going forward. And explosion goes off in front of us, and it's like 2 or 3 MRAPs in front of us, and they're spread out pretty good distance. And I said, I have an idea what the Army's going to do when they got hit, right? So my thing was to get out of the way, like as soon as we can get out of the way. So in hindsight, what I probably should have did was say reverse out, right?
Yeah.
But I said gas, 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 and I took the steering wheel and I'm steering right beside the MRAPs all the way around the circle. So to the point where they couldn't depress their guns to shoot us if they thought we were bad in V-bids. So I'm steering right along the side of the MRAPs. And as soon as I get a break around the circle, out we go, right? And thank God they didn't, think anything of us other than they had a lot of things to deal with at the time themselves. And again, my decision to go gas, gas, gas instead of reverse out, right? So we're hauling ass to the chute. And in order to make it into the chute to this compound, it's a hairpin turn. So we're hauling ass. I still got the steering wheel. This Iraqi, I kept telling him, stay on the gas, and we're hauling ass down the road. And I said, we're going to turn in right there at the end of the T-walls. We're going to turn left there. And I let go of the steering wheel, and he turned in, and we're screeching a little bit as we're making this hairpin turn across the street and then into the chute. And then we're safe. Well, that little bit of noise, guess what we saw when we were rounded the corner? All these Americans and locals that are there, right? Our team that's there, they're all gunned up waiting for something to come down the chute. And we're driving a V-bid, right?
Yep.
And flags out, orange panels, and I'm waving, hey, we're friendly, we're friendly. I'm on the radio. Radio's not working to try to talk to somebody in the compound that, hey, it's us. And I told our driver he was scared. So we rounded the corner, first from all that activity, then we rounded the corner, and now all these guns are facing at us. And I get out with the American flag, and I slowly got out. I started walking toward the front, so the Iraqis first. I was like, hey, I'm friendly, showed them my badge, and they said they were all amped up. They were getting ready to shoot something. And I was like, it's okay, calm down. And I kept walking, and I said, hey, where's the first American? I just yelled it down the chute. And I see a little hand come up and say, get over here. And then I recognized him. I was like, hey, man, it's us. It's like, we're good. And he's like, what the fuck, Ninja? I was like, dude, did you hear that shit? He's like, yeah, that's why we're all jacked up right now. We heard the explosion in the circle, and now you come screeching around the corner, man. You almost got shot up, man. I was like, well, we're here, man. It's like, I got a duffel bag full of money for you and some mail and all that crap. He's like, get your ass in here.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Did you look at the Iraqi and say, well, what do you think of your first day?
Yeah. He ended up quitting, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll bet.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So how did you get picked up from the CIA?
Well, I left Triple Canopy, went to DynCorp for a year, went down south to Basra with DynCorp. There was a Triple Canopy team down there. They were the first Americans that got hit by an EFP.
Oh, yeah.
Right, when all that crap started. Yeah. They were targeting the Brits initially. They finally hit. And we thought maybe it was a mistaken identity. They thought it was a British Land Cruiser. It was us, our Triple Canopy team as Americans. We queue up for those guys. That was a bad experience. Really, it was a body recovery thing. By the time, we were less than 5 minutes away. And it was one of those things, typical things where if you're on the street, you ask the other team, hey, if we get in trouble, can you come and assist us? We'll do the same for you. Well, we're crossing, similar paths, at least response times. And that was the case. They got hit. I think of the 3 guys in the car, 1 survived. I think.
Damn. Do you know the names?
I don't.
Brad Young ring a bell?
No.
By chance? No.
But yeah, they were in a bad way when we saw them. So some of the guys were alive when we first saw them, but some of the vehicles that were pinning them, they were pinned like on the one guy was pinned with the high side of the back of the seat, right? So that was actually keeping him alive, just keeping pressure in his system.
Damn.
But yeah, that was a scary moment. British that were down there. We responded, pulled the guys out of the vehicles, took them to the hospital. One guy, by the time we got to that point, one guy was alive by the time I got to the British hospital. He eventually dies on the table there. Yeah, it was one of those things where the thing to do was to go take pictures of this and put it, exploit it, the cameras, the camera footage on Al Jazeera and all that stuff, or wherever. So we get there, and I have a saw. I'm in a follow car, so I'm rocking a saw and all the ammo that comes with it. The new guy with me on the other side, he was funny. Got the call. Hey, we're hit. We saw the limo flying past us back to the State Department compound, and we're like, well, it's like, I think that was the limo, so the package is safe. And then we heard the guys that went to the crash site. So car gets hit on an up ramp, continues up, goes over the embankment, rolls, tumbles, and the guys in the front of that car were gone instantly. Probably they're the ones who took the brunt of the whole EFP thing.
Do you want to explain what an EFP does?
Yeah,
For the
explosive
audience.
form projectile. Yeah, it's a hot metal. It's a copper plate, and then that gets pushed with the explosives behind it, and it's packaged in a cylindrical tube or container, and so you have this conical shaped copper, and explosives behind it. It's primed from the rear, and then when it shoots out, it envelops on itself, and then forms a hot metal copper projectile. And it rips through everything. There's nothing that can stop that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and any armor at the time that anybody was using, it wasn't stopped. It was going right through that stuff. And usually, by the time it triggered on the front of the vehicle, if it was, and they were trying that at the time. They were trying timers, command detonated stuff, and then trips on passive infrared or red. You break a beam and it goes off. By the time that your bumper crosses that line and breaks the beam, the EFP explosive is right at the point where you're rolling, right at the front of the vehicle, the front passenger compartment, right? The driver and whoever's up front. And right through the front seat,
Yeah.
both people usually don't survive that. And backseat people, on the other hand, sometimes survive those things, other than all the other things that happen as a result of the explosion, right? Or the car crashing into things and wrecking and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there was at the time no defending that. And then eventually they come up with this little glow stick out in the front of vehicles to detonate it in front of the vehicle, so you're not lined up with the crew compartment on the vehicles. So that was really the only defense at the time for those things.
Yeah.
Eventually,
Then they figured that out, and it went to a heat signature, correct?
yeah,
So it would sense the heat of the engine.
yep, yep. And then there was then they started doing that at the front too. They put the stick out there with the like the radiator coil or hot coil, right?
Yeah.
And so that would hopefully trigger those initiating devices. Old school command detonated stuff, and sometimes multiple people. So that was the thing too. If something went wrong, or if somebody decided not to do something, or whatever it was, they had two people designated to detonate this thing. So it was usually some sort of the person tripping the device, whether it was a beam or whatever it was, or it was command detonated, secondary initiating device. So that was tearing people up for a long time in Iraq. And it was nothing you could do about it. the hot metal copper was just going through everything. But that's in Basra at the time in '05. That's when all that stuff started, and they were one of the first Americans to get hit by it. Horrible. And I was crowds were massing. I'm there with my 240. So I got a machine gun with a lot of bullets. And there's a lot of people out here, but they're just massing. What do you do with the massing crowd? I mean, they're not aggressive, but in the crowd, there's some aggressive people.
Yeah.
And that's what they're capitalizing on, right? They're going to keep getting closer with the crowd. So there's a helicopter, British helicopter comes across, and they're giving us a sit rep to the commander, the British commander on the ground. And we're trying to get him to land to take the people to the injured. One guy that was still alive had a heartbeat. We wanted to get him to the hospital. Well, they didn't want to land because they said it's too dangerous. There's too many people massing in your direction. Like, other than the people that are there, there's more people massing. And I was standing right by he was a lieutenant. I said, exactly. That's why we need to get down here and get our guy to the hospital. Like, now, get down here. We got you. We got it covered. To the extent that we could. I got a machine gun. We're good. We got to get this guy here, and they wouldn't land. And so we ended up packaging him up, putting him in our vehicles, and then trying to get him to the hospital. And they all expired. That was not a good time. They ended up bringing us back to Baghdad. They shut down operations down in Basra for a while. We went up to Baghdad and did the same shit in Baghdad.
Yeah.
Wasn't any prettier in Baghdad.
Damn.
But yeah, that was the round out of that. When I was deploying for that's when I started getting other offers, or every time I used to come home, check email, check voicemail, all this other stuff. And there's always job offers. Hey, we got something for you. I was going to another department, a paramilitary side of the organization. And I could never sync up interview times with this guy because he's deploying too. And he says at one point, he's like, hey, man. He's like, hey, brother. He's another former unit guy. He's like, hey, put in your resume for any position, and I'll have HR flag it that you've applied, and they'll get it when it comes through. So I did that. And that's how GRS eventually gets my resume. And I get a call. It doesn't say anything. It's like many of the other voicemails that I hear when I come back to the States. It's like, hey, we have something that you might be interested in. You're well suited for it, and all this other stuff. Give us a call for an interview if you're interested. So I call them and a bunch of other folks and set up interviews. They'll find out that it is GRS when I finally show up, that's what it is, because it was like, so back to my unit days, right? Getting into that whole thing. I was like, so what do you guys do? Who are you guys? And they go through the whole thing about, this is who we are, this is what we do, and they explain the whole hierarchy and where they fit in the whole structure of things. I was like, oh, I didn't know you guys did that, because I did a couple of trips for another buddy of mine on a similar protective thing in Baghdad and Afghanistan and Bagram. So it was like, I didn't know you guys did that. Yeah, sure, I'll try it, And that's how 16 years later, I spent 16 years doing, all the GRS stuff.
Damn.
And yeah, deployed. I stayed deployed most of that time.
When did you start in GRS?
'06.
'06. When did GRS start?
I'm not sure. I'm going to say around beginning of Iraq.
Are you hiring? What type of position are you hiring for? Maybe you need to hire somebody to wear many hats, which can be challenging. Or you might have a simple position to fill, but it's taking forever to find somebody who's a great fit for your company. I have that problem. Whether you need to hire a civil engineer in New York, a pediatric nurse in Nebraska, an attorney in Colorado, or even a mascot in Missouri, where I'm from,
ZipRecruiter can help you find qualified candidates fast, and now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/SRS. From accountant to zoologist and everything in between, ZipRecruiter's matching technology finds people with the right experience for your job and presents them to you. Then you can invite your top choices to apply. It's so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it now for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/SRS. Once again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/SRS. ZipRecruiter.com/SRS. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Mudwater is a coffee alternative with 4 adaptogenic mushrooms and atravaric herbs. With only a fraction of caffeine as a cup of coffee, Mudwater can help you get energy without jitters or the crash of coffee. Each ingredient was added for a purpose: cacao and chai for mood and a microdose of caffeine, lion's mane to help with alertness, cordyceps to help support physical performance, chaga and reishi to help support your immune system, turmeric for minor occasional soreness, and cinnamon for antioxidants. I think it tastes great. My favorite ingredient is the lion's mane because I like to help my alertness. How do I drink it? I just put it in a cup, stir it up, and slam it down. Mudwater's Whole30 approved, 100% USDA organic, non-GMO, gluten-free, vegan, and it's kosher certified. Mudwater donates monthly to a public education center for psychedelic research, as Mudwater believes this country is in a mental health epidemic and sees psychedelics as useful tools to aid individuals with depression, PTSD, anxiety, and other mental health problems. Go to mudwater.com/Shawn to support the show and use code ShawnMud for 15% off. These statements and products have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or condition. Yeah. So it only been around for 3 years?
Yeah. Something like that. I think there was always, officially, it depends on who you talk to. So in its current state, that's probably the start time. But there was always some sort of protective side of things coming from the more traditional Office of Security side of the house.
Yeah.
Right. So there was always that. So if you talk to those people, they were the original GRS guys. But in its current state, about beginning of Iraq time is when that all kicked off.
So it all kind of changed when the war kicked off.
Oh yeah. Contractors, contract companies to that's still, or it was up until Iraq and Afghanistan went away. The majority of the workforce were contractors, and that's where all the most experienced guys were that did that kind of work. So then staffers run the teams. Yeah, it's a whole new animal now, and I'm sure right now, I'm not sure about what their status is now, but since Afghanistan and Iraq has gone away for the most part, they've scaled it down quite a bit, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
Yeah. I don't know what kind of, mission profiles are running anymore, because it was more of a traditional, war zone, clandestine war zone, high threat environment that they were, used to operating in. So I'm not quite sure how that looks nowadays, but
Probably a lot different
Yeah.
than when me and you were there.
oh yeah, and it should. I mean, times are changing, so
Yeah, that is true. What was the... Did you go on as a staffer or did you come on as a contractor?
yeah, I went on as a staffer initially.
Okay.
Never made it to the paramilitary side. I ran into my buddies over there all the time, and they're like, "What the fuck, dude?" I was like, "I don't know. I got a pretty good gig over here, man."
Yeah.
Yeah, 90 days on, 90 days off. I'm into the whole rotation for 16 years. Yeah, I didn't mind it. I liked the job. I liked the work. I was around a lot of good stuff, man. Just the work itself, right? That particular mission and mission profile to get folks to do what they have to do, right? Get the clandestine teams to do what they do. Yeah, it was an interesting animal from a traditional diplomatic security standpoint to, do more with less, right? Now do all that with 2 people. So I don't think that uniqueness ever caught on, like that concept. Like this is the concept. Yes, this is how we train, but it's not like you roll with a lead car, a limo, a follow car, a cat car, and you have supporting overwatch from a helicopter and everything, and an army unit was standing by for QRF. Sometimes your team back at your base was your QRF.
Yeah.
Unless you had other people there, the Army or Marines that were there that could do that kind of stuff. Then it becomes, element in contact or their element first. Army first, if it was Army cats. If we're not doing anything for our folks, then we'll come to you, right? And that's just how it is. I mean, that's just policy. That's how everybody works. And we do the same thing. When they're asking us to do the same thing, QRF for them, it's like, sure, if we don't have anything going on, yeah, we'll come help you out. And that's just the way of it for years.
What were your? Let's talk. What did you think of the? I don't know if we can say the acronyms. Can we say the training acronyms? The training pipeline. What did you think of the training pipeline to get in? What was your initial assessment?
Yeah. So we had that discussion the other night. It was, if you're starting with some like a SEAL, Green Beret, a Ranger, that particular thing that we were doing back then had nothing to do with how we were operating in the field.
Yeah.
And as much as they hated to hear that, I wasn't just me, but I'm sure others are saying the same thing. And since I hadn't made a deployment yet, I was like, there's no way you're doing this in the field. Because it just doesn't make sense to me. And they kept telling me, they're trying to reassure me that this is how our people are doing it in the field. So you have to learn this so you'll be on the same sheet of music when you get there. I was like, all right, well, I'll do it. And so I went through the whole process, made it on board, went to the field for the first time. I was like, I knew it wasn't happening in the field because it's stupid.
Yeah.
And so from the experienced contractor folks who have some sort of experience, they've been through a basic training or a boot camp, right? They've been tested in MARSOC, BUDS, SFAS or RIP, ROPE, all these other things. They've gone through several layers of assessment and selection, and they've been in, the further we get into the wars, they've already been in the war zones, they've been in the combat zones, they've been on targets, and they've been in that environment already. They know it, and they're good at it. And so you can start with those folks at a certain point further down the road, right? You don't have to send them through another basic training, boot camp thing. You can do that, but that wasn't how the mindset was. It's like you got to train to the lowest common denominator, which is a staffer who sometimes didn't have any previous experience, like the contractor staff. So already it's not going to work. If you're training the lowest common denominator, a person who has no experience or very little experience, maybe they were in the military, but it wasn't a combat arms. Combat arms is either some sort of infantryman, a SEAL, a Ranger, somebody, right, that does that kind of work. Could have been a logistician in the Army or Air Force, right? Well, that doesn't equate. But they do have a college degree, and they're and a staffer, and they made it, to that point.
I could never understand. I gotta be careful how I say this, but
Yeah.
I could never understand why I'm hoping you can help me with this, because a lot of guys have this question. Why were the staffers qualifications lower than the contractor's qualifications if they're going to be the fucking team lead. With that being said, I'm not saying that all staffers
Yeah, because I was a
didn't
staffer.
have
What
the
are you trying to say?
experience.
No, I'm just kidding.
You were one of the most respected guys in that element. But a lot of staffers, and you know this, were not respected at all. And nor should they have been, in my opinion. What was that? Why were the qualifications so high to become a contractor and so low to become a staffer?
Yeah, it was a mindset where, for those of us coming out of the special operations community, right? We know we know that style of leadership, right, and what it takes to do that. But coming from, the staff side of the house and that management, they're not used to that. So their thing is a manager is a manager. A manager can manage any team, anywhere, anytime, right? As long as they have the education, the whereabouts, the smarts, and they go through the initial training, right? We're all the same.
Okay.
It's not true, but that's the mentality. And we've talked about it, and I've heard that conversation over the last 16 years a lot.
I'll bet you have.
In any of our training too, on the staff side, there's no leadership training. So, and I was willing to do, and I did it through the organization just to kind of figure out, what's the mindset, what's the take overall on your, what do you think in leadership is, and what are you expecting out of me, right? Kind of thing. And it's mostly oriented. Most of the leadership stuff is kind of geared towards an office environment.
Okay.
So you really can't get the field type of leadership that we're used to seeing, in the special operations community, infantry units, or anything like that. So that's where that's the missing link there on the unknowing, on like the not knowing how to train too, like leadership training. Manager at a Marriott, went to school, was in the Army for a little bit doing administrative work or something like that. Well, if he did that, then he can lead a team of pipe hitters in a war zone. Yeah. It makes absolutely no sense. And it, for the most part, it didn't work. They survived it, right? So for those guys, I've been in the senior leadership positions out there, and know that guys go out there and survive their 90 days. They go in the secure area, sit at their workstation. They never go on a run. They go to the chow hall. They make friends with everybody in the operational side of the secure area, but that's it. They can't get along with the team because they don't even know how to talk to the team. They don't have the same things to talk about.
Yeah.
So it goes on and on down that rat hole of they just isolate themselves, hang out for 90 days, and then they go somewhere else the next trip, so they don't have to go to the same place and deal with that again. There are a few good ones out there, but there are those a lot that don't lead by example. That's a big one, right?
Yeah.
They don't know how to do it. One, they don't know how to do the job, and then they don't seek the extra training to do it themselves. Because I'll hear about guys, even guys who have been in the business. I did the same thing myself. It's like I'll come back from a trip, and put myself into a training course of some sort. Because I went in. Yes, I was in a war zone for 90 days, but I didn't pull the trigger once. So I'm going to go to a range in a school and learn how to shoot again, or pull the trigger. Plenty of times that's happened where, I didn't do anything. There was no activity, and then, it was a good trip, right? It was boring, but nothing happened.
Yeah.
Come back. While I'm gone, I'm looking at another school to go to, or just a training course just to go to, just for shits and grins, just to stay up on whatever people are teaching, right?
Yeah.
And what's being discussed and who's showing up to these training courses, and then building a network, right? Maintaining that network of folks. I did it all the time. But that's not the norm on the staff side. On the I'd run into our contractors at some of these classes, right? It's like, good for you, man. Because otherwise you go re-qualify every 2 years, and that's it. If you didn't do anything else on your own, that's the only training you're going to get. But and I know some guys, even on the contract side, that's all they relied on. That's all they did too.
Yeah.
But that was very rare on the staff side to hear somebody like, "Hey, I'm going to, shoot with, Jerry Barnhart or anybody. I'm going to Larry Vickers School or something like that, or I'm going to Viking Tactics, carbine level 3 or whatever." You didn't hear a lot of that. It's like, I don't know why. Why wouldn't you? Like, try to be better yourself, right? Try to better yourself. Try to be the best person. If this is what you do for a living, then you should probably, working to get better at it, right? And there's times where, the longest time I've gone without pulling the trigger was when I was deployed for 90 days because nothing happened. It's like, well, that's not. I couldn't get to a range because you couldn't go to the place where you can shoot guns or didn't have a range on your facility. And then other times that was the training place to be.
Yeah.
Because you had a range and you had an unlimited supply of bullets available to you, and it was the best training ever. It didn't happen. Not a lot of operational stuff going on, but you were able to do some AOP drills, live fire stuff, and those kind of things, and then bring back. So when me or any of the guys that were doing that when they were back home in the States, they go to a class, then they bring it right back to the field and say, "Hey, this is what I learned at whatever class they went to, whatever course they went to." Now we have the opportunity to have a 360-degree range and a better training environment to practice all these things. So we'd go out there and do it. Like the Mosuls and Kirkuks and stuff like that, perfect areas. Most places in Afghanistan, you had a place to go shoot guns and do some good training, right? But a lot of guys didn't do that, so they weren't good at it either. When we're talking about the guys that didn't have the respect, they weren't good at it, and they didn't work to get better at it,
Yeah.
shooting or otherwise. So they didn't even go to the range with their own teams because they were afraid of showing their ass. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Instead of seeking the advice from those experts,
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, teach me how to shoot as good as you," right?
Or anything.
Yep, that's
CQB,
rare.
driving, communicators.
Yep.
Anything. Breaching. I don't usually chime in on interviews, but I found the agency in that particular environment to be really, it was difficult to navigate. I worked with the best people I've ever worked with there, and I've worked with the worst fucking people I've
Yeah.
ever worked with there.
Yep.
I feel like GRS is probably one of the most underrated units in the entire organization. I think the majority of people there, it was a very fucking high caliber group of individuals. And me personally, my opinion is the agency never realized the full capability of what we had to offer. And is an entire organization. Now I had been to sites and I've been to different safe houses and whatever spots where the chief of base, the guy in charge, realized how capable we were, and it was, "Hey, can you guys go snatch this guy?" "Yeah, we can do that." "Can you call in Apaches?" "Yeah, we can do that." "Can you guys breach?" "Yeah, we can do that."
Yeah.
And it was the answer was never no. Whatever they brought, we could figure out how to fucking do it because it was all Delta, Team 6, SEALs, Rangers, Green Berets, PJs, CCT guys.
Yeah.
And I honestly think it was probably the most capable unit that I've ever fucking participated in.
Yep.
But what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. The most capable and the most
Underrated.
misunderstood and underrated, right? Even from our own management side of the house, they don't even know what they have available to them. They don't
Yeah.
even know the capabilities of the guys that are working for them, which is just always just amazed me. And so if they were able to understand what it is exactly that's going on in the field and disregard all the pony shows that were going on when they show up on the site somewhere overseas, because that's all it is, dog and pony show. Well, then they're like, "Oh, well, things are good." You guys are good. Well, it's all hiding things and only showing them what they need to see, right? And dog and pony shows, and not having a real conversation with them when they're there. It's like, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. And it sure would be nice if we had training in a safe environment back in the States to do this, because this is what we're actually doing. The cookie cutter training stuff, that's fine. We actually have a situation we would like to train on specifically for this area, because this is what we deal with every day. And it's just never seen that way. It's a training thing too. It's training concepts that they're not familiar with too, that allow that to happen back. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't know what they don't know. So you can tell them all day long. And I used to get this, well, we're not at your old place anymore. We're not all going to be commandos. So, stop trying to make us your own commandos. I was like, I'm not. But they're capable people out there that can use this training, because that's what we're doing. This is how we're accomplishing the mission. Now, on the operational side, for the most part, they loved us and all the capabilities, with some exceptions where you have some animosity and some, stuff going on like that, they don't want to, they don't like you, you're a knuckle dragger, you're just a meat eater, I don't need you out here, we can do our own stuff. And I've actually heard that, and I used to put it back on them, like, well then, all right, well, I can take my team somewhere else, because we can be more effective if we even go to, name a base somewhere else. If you don't need us, then just say you don't need us, and I'll take the team and we'll go somewhere else. And then they're like, well, wait a minute, what about...
But what if...
Yeah.
What if something bad happens?
Right. And I was like, okay, you see what I mean? We could do that and all these other things for you while we're here. We can, it's a very, it took, over 20 years, right? To finally get the point across that what are the actual capabilities? Because there's also this thing going on that, yeah, we did this thing and it was great and everybody loves us at this one base, but it's not within it wasn't what we trained to, and it's not in any SOPs. It's not in anything that we should be doing, right? We went not out of the box, but you did exactly what needed to be done to get the job done, right? And it wasn't necessarily what was being taught in an academic environment, right? But that's the reality of the situation that we were in, right? That's the world we lived in. And so they didn't discuss or describe exactly what happened, so nobody ever knows about it. So it's not captured in any documents, no official cable traffic, no emails, nothing, because they're afraid of saying they did something that they weren't supposed to do and then get in trouble for it, right? And I used to tell the guys all the time, don't be afraid of doing something for fear of losing your job. If it's the right thing to do, just do it. And then worry about it later. There are times when you don't have time to float it across, a discussion or a leadership forum to say, hey, is this okay to do? Sometimes in those environments, they're so dynamic, things happen, and you got to make decisions. And that's where, we used to make our money, making those kind of decisions. But then articulate that. That's on me and all my other staffer, colleagues to do, right? Articulate that back to our management to let them know exactly what we're doing, because it's great stuff. And I did that for, 16 years, trying to get that embed into the training programs, which over time, some of it's still there, but it's still kind of a sterile training environment, right? Which it can be a little bit more realistically in that regard, but it's come a long way since 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not just me. It's a lot of folks that have come on board since then and has been able to have those discussions, truth to power kind of stuff. And they're not, I was never one to be, just like I was saying, I'd tell everybody else, and I lived it myself. Don't be afraid to make decisions for fear of losing your job. Make a decision based off of what you know. Do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And if all goes well to that point, you don't have to struggle to describe what you did, success or fail. Like one of the things I told our deputy chief, great guy. We were trying to get a piece of the. So we evacuated Tripoli 2014, and we're going now. They're asking for assistance to go back. It's going to be a more traditional, like way back in the day, OSS infill. Just very few people, and I want to say expeditionary, but those that hear expeditionary, it means a lot of other things. A small team to go get us back into Libya at the time. And they asked for assessments. What would it take for you guys to support this? And everybody that was given their numbers, like, well, we need a 2-man team for this guy. We need a follow QRF team. So that's 3 armored vehicles, 8 guys. All of them need carbines and pistols, and then machine guns. It's like, okay, you missed the whole point. How about you give us 2? Can you give us 2 guys to go and help out other folks that are more than capable? So these are all experienced, either on the paramilitary side, or they're experienced tactically, technically competent and proficient folks that are being hand selected to go do this.
Okay.
And I said, no, we need to get a piece of that, because we have guys that can do that. But we need to have the adult conversation with people who get wind of this and that want to go, but aren't that person that we need to go represent us or support that team in this capacity, because they just aren't capable to do that. And that's another thing we were lacking too on the management side, is having those frank discussions with people. And you can't. I personally was on a lot of situations, is they wanted to come to a site that I was at. I was like, no, sorry, man. They said, but you asked for whoever. I was like, yeah, because I need him out here for whatever his competencies were, and no, sorry, man. Love you like a brother, but I don't need you out here. You're doing well where you're at. Just stay right there. And having those kind of discussions. It's like, I need somebody with a little less, whatever it was. Usually it was an anger management thing, or a very strict. Because the places I like to go to, you had to be a little bit more out of the box thinking. Maybe do something or answer the mail on something and actually say no to certain things, but know when to do that. That was the hardest part for me to convey to my other staff or colleagues, to say, it's not always yes, but you always try to get to yes. It's like, yes, but not that way. How about this? And then have an answer, right? So have those smart discussions, and that's what they want. They want to open up the discussion. And I've heard things, and something gets floated on the table. Say, could you guys do this? And it just sounds totally ridiculous. It's like, we could, but we probably shouldn't do it that way. And then have an answer for it, right? How about this, right? Give them a solution. Those are all the discussions that they want to elicit from you. They'll just throw something on the table, and if you say no, that's not what we do. We got a strict SOP to do it this way. It's like, or not. I mean, do you have to stick? I mean, what's telling you that you have to do these exact things this exact way? This is a different country. This is a different threat environment. Everything's different about this place. Your management team that you're working with is different. Their authorities are different. It's so many things that can be involved in this thing, but they don't think all that through. It's a lot of the guys who have the least amount of previous experience. So they were like the lance corporals or whatever in the Marine Corps, or the junior leaders wherever they were, but they were never in a leadership position themselves before they left the military or police departments, wherever they're coming from, right? They weren't in those positions to make those kind of decisions. To see that transition from, the team member to the team leader. So they never made that transition. And those are the guys who get stuck with SOPs and policies and all that other stuff, instead of looking at these things as, well, this is what the policy says, this is our SOP, but standard operating procedures are based off of what? Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Right? That was another place, another time. Well, then let's see what we can do to make this work, right? Accomplish the mission, period.
Yeah.
And with that
solve
mindset
this
too.
problem.
Yep. And unfortunately, our contractors are stuck because they're contractors, right? That's why they're staffers, right? The staff makes the decisions, right? Especially when it comes to money and all these other things. But so there's staff things that staffers do, and most of that is the authorities side of the house, and the interaction with the chiefs and the senior folks that are there wherever you're at. Have those discussions, be in those meetings, and convey your capabilities to their mission and how to accomplish it, right? Or how to accomplish anything that they're talking about at the table.
This episode of the Shawn Ryan Show is also sponsored by HVMN. You've heard the buzz about ketone supplements and how they can boost your workouts by helping your body use fatty acids for fuel. You've probably heard them on this show because they sponsor this show. I take a shot of HVMN's ketone supplement before my morning workout. It's focused energy. It's not an energy drink, though. It's like a feeling of being in the zone. I don't feel hyper jittery, anxiety, stuff like I get when I drink too much caffeine. Ketone IQ comes in portable, convenient shots. They're great for cycling, long runs, all kinds of workouts, and can help you stay sharper on a regular basis. The taste may not be great, but it really doesn't matter. I wish I had this product when I was on active duty in the military. Let's just say I think the product is pure, and I really do like the product. Again, it's not an energy drink. It's not a bunch of stimulants. You could get better endurance. You don't get the crash, and it could help curb the appetite a little bit. Definitely a unique opportunity here in offering my audience 20% off your first order at Ketone IQ. You can find Ketone IQ at hvmn.com. Use the promo code Shawn at checkout to save 20%. Plus, if you subscribe, you can save a little bit more. This stuff is great for daily use. Promo code Shawn. Again, that's hvmn.com. Use the promo code Shawn for 20% off Ketone IQ.
And I've been at the table, I don't know how many times, where I hear them talking and they're saying, well, GRS can't do that. Because the previous guy that was there in my spot had said they can't do it for some reason. And I was like, wait a minute. No, that's well within our purview to do that. That's what we're here for. I mean, you guys are paying money for us to be here to do exactly that thing. Assume the risk that, a higher level of risk assumption that we're going to take for you to accomplish the mission, right? And that's what we're here for. It's like, so those discussions are lacking in some of our, because they were junior leaders and they never felt empowered to make those decisions in their previous lives. And then nobody told them that was okay to do that in their current lives, right? And I used to say that all the time to the guys. You got to go to this meeting. You got to go to this meeting. I know meetings suck, but you got to go to this meeting and have those discussions with these people at that point, because that's the initial phase of getting things done. They're talking about things they want to do, and they need somebody in there to tell them, yes, I can support that, or no, I can't support it. But how about you do this, this way? How about we incorporate somebody else, or ask for military support, or wait, let me get more guys here for a surge or something like that. That's what they need to hear, the interaction that they needed to hear, which wasn't happening in a lot of places. It's like, I don't have enough guys here. I have 3 guys, and we need to do this thing. It's like, let me ask for some more guys. And yes, we could do it if I get 3 or 4 or 5 more other guys here. So that's huge. And it's from what I can tell, up until the day I left, it's still going on to some extent. The junior leaders don't know how to have those conversations. They're never told or taught those kind of things either. So that's another thing on our part that we didn't do as an organization to help those junior leaders become senior leaders.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because it's also not part of your evaluations either. So the whole performance evaluation doesn't, just because you're there is good enough. Doesn't matter what your performance level was, because nobody's there to watch you, except for the guys on the ground, and they're not part of your rating scheme. So, if you were to ask team members, your team, what they thought. If they were to ask them, what did they think of you as a leader? That would be a whole new, whole new, you know,
Yeah.
avenue to take to find out what exactly you were like on the ground, right? Because that says a lot, right? Or to even ask the senior organization guy that was there, the chiefs, hey, how did my guy do? That conversation wasn't happening here. From manager to manager, headquarters to the field. How's my guy doing out there? Never that conversation. If and when it ever did, they would always say, oh, he's doing fine, you know. I mean, he's doing everything you guys do. And, you know, very washed down, very politically correct. They're not going to say bad things about anybody. So there's not that frank discussion either. A lot of times. Sometimes yes, a lot of times no. Like, hey, this is what expectation brief, right? Hey, this is what I expect out of you during your time here. I used to give that to the team. Any team I went to, it's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do while I'm here. This is what I want to get done while I'm here. This is what I expect of you to get that done. And then what do you guys have expectations of me, right? That's like the initial in brief, other than, you know, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is my job in this whole station environment. This is what I can do for you. Everything falls on me. I'm responsible for everything we all do or fail to do. So if anything goes wrong, it's all on me. And I talk to the man about it. I'm the one going on the carpet, neither one of you, unless it's an individual thing that you need to account for. That's all I ask from the guys ever.
Yeah.
Like, be accountable for yourself, be responsible. If you screw up, own it. Yeah, and be responsible and accountable for your actions, good or bad. And that doesn't happen enough, though.
Yeah. Let's get to some of the operational type stuff that happened. There were some major incidents that happened. One of them being Benghazi. Mm-hmm. Where were you when that happened?
I was in Baghdad when that happened. Yeah, that was, so 2012, I was in Baghdad closing down the old villa. We were closing down the villa, moving out of the villa, going over to the new embassy compound. Yeah, that was an interesting incident. Of course, administratively, that was another administration thing. I think that we were all under some lack of leadership or misled by leadership, you know, all the way up to the White House in that case. Yeah, and I of the guys, Tyrone and Bob, I worked with Bob in Israel a few times. I didn't know Tyrone. I didn't know the ambassador Stevens or anybody, the communicator that was out there. But yeah, that was there was a lot of things I wish we could like that. Just like another incident that story, that's a great story, but the way it came out in the movie, it wasn't. It just sounded like our like guys complaining about what happened, right? There's a lot of good things. I mean, I'm not saying anything out there was not horrible, because it was a horrible situation. But what our guys ended up doing in this horrible situation was amazing, right?
Yeah.
So instead of having that kind of tone to the whole thing, it was, didn't quite have that tone. Like there was a lot of administrative stuff and backside stuff that they weren't aware about that couldn't make it in the movie probably, but affected the outcome of all this stuff. That wasn't talked about or discussed in the movie, or nobody knows about that stuff, but maybe in some of the books I haven't read.
Can you elaborate on it now? Or no?
No, probably not. It wouldn't be a good thing. So there are some stories out there, and from our guys that were out there and that are still alive telling the story. They did some amazing and heroic stuff. So making decisions on the fly, I wasn't taught this. I'm not supposed to do this. The reliancy on the locals, right? Who ended up abandoning their posts, but then somehow relying on them from the station management to come back and help. And what I know of Libya and my interaction with all the militias out there, their loyalties are always to their own countrymen, right? Even if they're in different militias. They won't fight another militia for you. And that's exactly some of which happened out there. Because they got to live with them, right? And they can't go to war with another militia, a neighborhood who they have maybe family members in. And that's just the dynamics of militias and a lot of places. And the lack of understanding of that, right? The actual, like their actual intent. And I've done the same thing. You've asked them for help if we got help. If we need help from them, and yes, all day long. Yes, we'll come help you because you're Americans, you're our friends. But then their neighboring militia, even if it's their worst enemy on a normal day, the militia that they hate the most, they might go to fisticuffs for a little bit, but they're not. When it comes push to shove, they're going to stop and say, "Okay, stop," because we got to live with each other. The Americans will go home, but we're still going to be here. So trying to try to imagine in that scenario, in that case, knowing that if I'm asking a militia, and I'm relying on a militia to come help me because I'm being attacked by another militia or another anybody, unless it's a common enemy outside of that country, right? The Al-Qaeda's and the ISIS and all those folks. If it's from outside, if they're foreign fighters, that's a whole other animal. But for our folks that don't understand that, first of all, it's beyond me why they wouldn't understand that, because that's just militia 101. And Libyans, when I used to talk to them all the time, militia to militia, they actually say those things when you're asking for assistance. And I said exactly, hey, what if this militia was attacking us? Would you come help us? And they're like, well, maybe if one of our people are involved, right? We might go to war with them, but that's asking a lot of them.
Yeah.
And just that misunderstanding of how the dynamics work there, and to think that you can rely on them to do those kind of things. It's not an American, right? You can't outdo the American fighting spirit, regardless, whoever that is. I mean, that is a unique thing only to Americans. But we often think that we train these people, so they have adopted our mentality about helping others.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and it's not the case.
Good point.
Yeah, it's not the case. Especially if it's us, because we're the foreigners to either one of those folks. Even though they're our friends, we're always the foreigners. We're always the guests. So if you think about it in those terms, they're not going to risk the rest of their livelihoods and their children's livelihoods and their generations past, because they go to war. When they go to war, they go to war for generations. Even if that's the case, and we saw it in Afghanistan, we've seen it in Libya, we see it in everywhere we've been over the last 20 years plus. It never works out. If you're a studier of war and militias and all those kind of things, you see those are common threads, and those are common stories after the fact. Well, we were relying on the militia to come save us because they said they would, and we've been training with them, we've been drinking with them, we've been eating with them every day for the last 10 years, right? And they're our friends. We smile together, we laugh together, we mourn together, we fight together, and then when it comes push to shove, though, if it's against one of their neighboring people, I can't think of a entity right now that would do that for us. And that's kind of what happened
Okay.
Some of which has happened in Libya altogether, and all of my experiences in Libya, but in Benghazi as well. So our office there was relying on the locals to come do something, and they
Damn.
didn't. Yeah, they didn't. They wouldn't. That's so they kind of portrayed that in the movie a little bit, where the local guard force has a cell phone, and he's talking to one of the commander of the attacking force, and I can't remember what character it was they had in the movie that was saying, "Who are you talking to?" And he's talking to the commander of the attacking force. It's like, how do you have his phone number? Well, it's because they live together. So they live in the same.
Yeah.
They're locals, and yeah, it's just you can try to portray that all you want, and and SF community, right? That's what you do in FID, right? You train locals to do local to win their own battles. So the tendency in that environment too, and we do the same thing. Our guys that are working with locals, you fall in love with your own work, your own locals. I train them; they're good. They'll do anything I want them to do. They listen, and all day long, because you're feeding them, you're paying them, you're clothing them, you're giving them training, and of course they're your friends because they're your friends for now. But then when push comes to shove, and you ask them specific questions about if this militia or whatever you want to call them are attacking us because we just got some threats that are coming out of this area of the city, would you guys come help? And most often it'll be either they don't want to say no because they want to make you happy, and that's but they'll kind of walk around the conversation and say yes, like just to make you happy.
Yeah.
But guess what? Over and over and over again, not just there, but in other places too, we call them for help, and somehow that phone never gets answered. It's like, oops. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's move to the Khost bombing.
09, December.
Yep.
Yep. Another good book, The Triple Agent. Awesome read to know how Balawi did what he did that day, and he was good. He was better than most clandestine agents anywhere training. He wasn't even trained.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what happened.
Yeah, so I got there probably 3 weeks maybe before that happened, beginning of December. I was going to show up, be the country team lead guy, and I was going to go around the bases. I ended up staying in Kabul and working in Kabul. And I was getting feedback on things that are happening out there. Hey, we're spinning up for high threat meet and all this other stuff. Can you look up this person? Can you look up this stuff? See if you got any information on it. You couldn't get any information on it. So there's a lot of things there that were close hold, compartmented for a reason that they wanted to keep it close hold, right? Compartmented. So our guys weren't getting information. A lot of physical things about lack of information. The physical security building there was a facility that was an existing facility. They made it a SCIF, right? Limited access or limited like computer space. There were people actually hot seating at the same computer station because there wasn't enough space. There weren't enough drops. So there's lack of communication, lack of information for those reasons, compartmentalization, and then physical access to a computer to ask questions. And then there was the withholding of information from the management team to in order to put a plan together, in order to plan appropriately. And then there's a reluctancy to listen to that, the guidance that our guys were giving out there. And there was two or three team leaders on the staff side that have gone through there and worked that problem set and were unable to convey to them, this is the best way to do this. Because it ended up to be mostly focused towards, may have been the pressures from outside of that base to get something done, or whatever it was, which is also shouldn't be a consideration. Sure, okay, I feel pressure to get something done. But the fear of failing, right? That's the whole thing. I got to get something done, or I'm going to be perceived as a failure. Well, or you can be alive to tell the story that you failed, right?
Yeah.
All these indicators. I mean, the triple agent paints a good picture, so we'll never ever see the official report on it. They took a lot of internal over several years. Like what did we think happened internally? What did we do wrong? What could we do right? What could we have done better? Right? A lot of unwillingness initially to actually identify the leadership problems that were going on, the communication problems that were going on, the disclosure of information, right? Enough for our security teams that were out there to have a decent plan or to even be listened to. But it was crazy during those times. So what I'm finding out, my first days underground, each base has different criteria for searching people. There's color codes, there's number codes, and you probably remember some of those. There's gold and yellow and green means you do this to this person. Red means full on strip down, give them new clothes, and different levels of searches. That was one of the things on my list of things to do. It's like, no. Let's get this shit together and figure out a way to, not individual bases, but I thought that needed to be consistent throughout the theater. Because we were the ones doing the searching. So I go to one base, I got this whole nother criteria for searching people. I go to another base, and I got another search criteria, and they're all bad guys. So what's the level of bad guy, right? What is this guy? What's his deal? And then you get fed the information that they want you to know about this guy to get a minimal search criteria on this dude. He gets painted with, a minimal search, and okay, that's all I know. I don't know any different. I don't have any information to go on. That all changed after that. So there's now somebody to reach out to find out exactly the threat level and those kind of things. But leading up to that, there was a reluctancy to listen to the GRS guys on the ground and how it needed to go down. There were some other folks, and even it might have been in Darren Labonte is one of the guys that died in that one. He's coming from Jordan. It might have been in Triple Agent or some other book or article where he's actually expressing some reluctancy to do this because it just seems like we're not in control of this guy. He's controlling the op tempo. He's making the meetings. He's canceling meetings, which is what happened that day too. He's coming up with excuses, and somehow he magically has this access that we're just all salivating over. How does that happen? Well, he has actually described some of the reluctancy to do this based off of his spidey senses going off on this guy. He's like, hey, that's too much access too quickly for this guy. Why would that happen? How would that happen? And so he's one that says something in some documents, like it's public knowledge. And I'm thinking it's probably Triple Agent, a great book to read on how this whole thing goes down from a third-party perspective. So there's no favoritism either way. It's what he did and how he was able to do it.
Do you want to talk about actually what happened in Khost? How it happened? Who died?
Well, he goes south side is the team leader for GRS down there. I'm talking to him for a couple of days, a week or two before that, and he's frustrated he wants to go meet this guy down in town or outside of town somewhere, search him off base, so they're the only ones exposed to a potential threat. That gets denied, and at one point I'm on the phone with them, and I say, well, you can deny our services if he's so safe that they don't need your services. You can say, okay, we're out. Hey, take care of it, Chief. Have a good one. We'll be in the team room playing, Xbox or something, whatever. I actually said that, and he actually pulled out. He's like, well, if if you don't need us and you're not taking my advice on anything, then all right, well, have a good meeting. We'll be over here if you need us. Almost last minute, I don't know. At one point, he decided that he calls me and he's calling me because he can't get on the system. He's hot seating on a workstation. He said he was out, and then he calls me. He's like, "We're back in." He was like, "We're going to do what we can at the site when he shows up because that's all we're giving." And he didn't feel good about just standing around not doing anything. So he's like, "We're going to set up outside the." So everybody wasn't supposed to be outside there. It was just supposed to be the GRS team to meet him. Darren and the Jordanian officer were supposed to be there. And that's it, just to meet and greet. And then he meets everybody when he goes inside the room that was set up for the meeting. That was a last minute thing there. Everybody comes out to form a greeting line. And unfortunately, that gets a lot of people killed that wouldn't have otherwise been dead today. Those are all decisions not made by GRS, but it was all made last minute by the station management. But Southside calls me and he says, "We're back in. We're going to do what we can. We got something worked out in the front of the building to make this happen, and we'll do what we can. And we're going to take, we're going to be the ones exposed, which is what we do, right? And if all went well and it still went bad, there would be a few less dead people today, subject to anybody else's assessment of what happened." That's what I know, and that's what I think would have happened otherwise. Our guys would have still been dead because that's the job that they had to do, and he was going to Blau was going to blow himself up. That's what he went there to do. And then Darren and the Jordanian intel officer would have been dead as well. But there would have been at least 3 others still alive. He says he's going back in. He's got a plan. They're going to do what they can because that's what they're there for. And the plan was for all the folks to wait on the inside and meet him when he came inside. The meet and greet was going to happen with Darren Labonte and the Jordanian officer, intel officer. 3 GRS guys out there to meet and greet, do the whole pat down and search, and then off to the meeting they go. Well, last minute, the local guard force. The concern was the rapport and the identification from the local guard force of Blaui coming in, right? So the local guard force was either told to look away or they were taken off of the gates to come in. And only Americans were going to be there. But the Americans, they were going to be compliant. There was this little card they showed. The driver had either I'm under duress or I'm okay, right? They flip the card one way or the other. He's okay was shown. Either way, the gates were up and free access to come in base. No searches. That was another spot where the static guys wanted to at least do a search. And I had described to Southside at the time, too. I was like, well, if you're out at the perimeter of the fence where they're coming in at the gate and you do the search, I've done it myself on other occasions too, but so I wasn't telling them anything that I wouldn't do if I was there doing the thing myself. Take the ash chewing later because they're going to complain about it later, right? If they go into the meeting, hey, you guys searched me, roughed me up. You said that wasn't going to happen. Hey, put it on me. It's all on me. Right? My bad, sorry. But they weren't allowed to do that. They were very strictly observed, controlled about how the things were going to go down. And eventually they decided to do what the best thing they have, with this shit sandwich, We'll meet him when he comes in front of the facility. Search him there, and then escort him inside, and then get on with the meeting. Unbeknownst to them, there's like, let's go out and form this meet and greet line. Unfortunately, she's not here live to defend herself in that decision, but that was a decision made by station management to go do that. Ended up killing more people, including herself. Our guys died probably instantly, because they were ground zero of the explosion, along with Darren Labonte and the Jordanian intel officer. He went there with the intent to kill Americans. That was his whole intent. And to think that, when you think in that mindset, the premise of the whole thing to alleviate all the security measures for rapport, to maintain rapport, that's not a good reason to do that for security, right? Especially when we're talking Afghanistan.
Yeah.
We're talking Afghanistan 2009. And all the red flags are up all throughout this whole thing, including up to that meeting where he says he's injured. He provides his story along the way. He builds a story that he was in a moped accident or whatever. He's got a hurt leg, so he's going to be, he has a cane now. He's walking with a cane. He shows up and he works his whole cover story the whole way through. His whole intent, now that we know after the fact, right? We know after the fact now that he had a video that was his intent the whole time, right? But the stuff that we were doing over there, you have to assume, otherwise. You have to assume that that's their intent to begin with. And then not from a paranoid, not from a fear standpoint, not from a overly protective standpoint, but it's the reality of the environment at the time. How he's getting there, who he is, the access that he has, even if it's even if he's been forced to do it, even if he's being forced to wear a body vest and to gain access, and somebody else is going to be around to initiate when he gets close to Americans. So these are all of the things that all the guys that I know that were there planning that mission, the 3 staffers that were there, they were thinking all these things. Well, what if he's unwitting? Or not unwitting, but what if he's being coerced to do this so he can wear a body vest so somebody else can clack it off on him, right, when he gets close to America? What if? We don't know. Who knows this guy that well? But that was going on across the board in Afghanistan at the time at all of our bases, where there's different search criteria, and it was just a mess of search criteria and what to do, how to do it. This was a new one. This is another one. And for whatever reasons, get rid of all the security measures. When you think about it now, for us in the business, it's like to get rid of all security measures, given the situation, the circumstances, time and place, to maintain or build rapport for a person who's been manipulating you and canceling, not acting right, come up with excuse after excuse to not meet you, then I'm going to meet you, then cancel, and then all these other things. He'll send you sends a video for you to chomp on really quick, salivate over. And, all these flags, all these red flags went off, and disregarding all those things, get rid of all the security measures, doesn't make sense to anybody. Yeah. At the time or after the fact, before or after. Before, during, it doesn't make any sense at all. He gets out of the car, decides, all right, this is as close. He sees a whole bunch of people standing there, and perfect for him everything aligns for him to do his job. And that's what he went there to do, get as many Americans as possible. Our guys, see that there's something going on. Pretty sure it was Scott yelling at the guy to get his hands out, showing me his hands and all this other stuff. Dan and Jeremy are with him, pulling cover. Wyatt, the fourth guy, he's standing by the welcoming party. He's back there by the door of the building. So he survives the day because of his location. He wasn't, he gets injured, but he doesn't die. He's alive to tell the story because of where he was. But yeah, that it was just, and the things that I was hearing across the board, not just in Khost, but across the board, how we were supporting operations. In my mind, I'm writing these down as a new guy. I got to address these things with all the team leaders and all the teams in Afghanistan, that we need to get this under control. And I'm conversing with headquarters that this is what I'm going to do. This is what I see. This is what I want to do. Just so you know, this is things I wanted to take care of. That was one of them, was the search criteria there. And Scott, it was a first-time staff deployment, but he was a contractor before that. So the whole game wasn't new to him. He'd been caught before that. None of this was new to him. He knew exactly what to do, how it should go down, was not listened to, didn't have, for some reason, station management there just didn't want to listen and do what they needed to do. And unfortunately, they're not around to answer the mail for that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, things go bad, sideways. I was in Kabul when I heard the radio call. So I'm talking to another former unit guy. He's working the FOBS office, the Forward Operating Base office, and that's where the radios and the monitors are and all that stuff for all their stations and predator feeds and all that stuff. And we're just having a conversation. I'm walking back to the security office, and he comes down the hallway to get me, gets air ops, gets all these folks, all the chiefs that were on at the headquarters there. And he says, there's been an explosion on Khost. We're not sure who's injured, if there's any injuries or what the injuries are. Initial statements, right? They're never accurate. These are the names that we hear. And he's rattling off a bunch of names. So how is everybody, in my mind, how is that many people around an incident like that? I thought initially it was an accident of some sort, because how is everybody from the senior person there all the way down to our guys, how are they all in the same place at the same time?
Yeah.
So as I'm trying to digest what's happening, and as the medevac is happening out there and they're getting shipped to Salerno, to the cache there, they're starting to confirm KIAs and wounded in action and who's who. And so at that time, Sachs, I'm talking to Sachs about, hey, get three guys or four guys, however many I said. I need four guys to fly with me to Khost. Like now, pack a bag. We got to fly immediately. And that's what I was talking about. My communication skills at the time. I don't think I told him why we needed to do that. I just needed four guys to fly with me to Khost. Because something happened in Khost. I don't remember exactly what I said. I don't think I gave him the story of what happened. But when I find out, who's dead or dying out there, there's all four of our guys that are out there on this list, dead or dying. So then instead of a QRF, because I don't know exactly where it's happening, I'm not familiar with the Khost area yet, and I didn't know it was on base. So anything they said, I'm thinking it happened out in town somewhere, because GRS is involved, so we're usually out of the wire, downtown somewhere. I hadn't been to Khost yet, and I had to get some guys that had been to Khost and familiar with Khost to get there and to go with me. And then it just became by the time I get there, that's the first time I find out who's dead and who's wounded.
How long after the incident did it take for you to get down there?
It was probably 4 hours.
That's it?
Yep. A lot of things were going bad then at the time, overall in the theater. Some aircraft, fixed wing or rotary wing, were socked into weather. Some were not working. They're waiting on engine parts. And there wasn't,
Shit.
just a shitstorm of things that collided together in that one moment to get a response team there. So it became, after I found out, that the whole team had been wiped out, and it wasn't a QRF thing anymore. It was a recovery thing. So EOD guys went out there to do their part on the scene. Army EOD was already on the site to do the EOD stuff. And by the time I got there, the sun had dropped. It's dark. Everybody that had to be evacuated was evacuated. Some guys were headed to Bagram at that time already, the living injured. And then off to Landstuhl after that. But most of the folks were either dead or confirmed dead, or they're on their way to get help, either in Bagram or Landstuhl. And then it was literally just
Cleaning up.
cleaning up the mess. Yeah, literally. So the three guys that flew out there with me, I apologize to them because I don't know what information I told them about flying down there with me, what we were doing, and what had happened. I told them when we got to the airport, waiting for the plane there, that this is what happened and this is why we're going. And appreciate you guys stepping up to fly out last minute with me to this thing and all that kind of crap. Yeah, we got there, and then it was about accountability of the folks that were there, accountability for their stuff, making sure their stuff was taken care of, all their personal belongings and all that kind of stuff. Sensitive items, all that stuff. Then it became a mission of going to grab the guy that facilitated the crossing. So the only guys that were left were the paramilitary guys to do anything like that. So between me and the other GRS guy that was there, we were helping them plan to go talk to this guy, find him, go talk to him, see what he knew, when he knew, and all that kind of stuff. See if he was culpable on any of this stuff, or he was just a facilitator, just like he did what he was told. That's all he did. So that was what that became. So work with the locals that were out there, with paramilitary guys with their locals, to go get this guy, and then question him about what had happened during that whole incident. But yeah, that was not something easily to handle at the time. I mean, that was the most horrific sight I've seen in my life to that point, and I think since then. But again, I mean, our guys did exactly what they were supposed to do. So even if they did that at the gate, further away, or in town, our guys would have still been dead. But that's what we were there for, to minimize the damage to everybody else, to others. As a protective agent, I'm taking the hit for you. And they weren't allowed to do that. Unfortunately, they were killed, and then others were killed in the process or wounded. So unfortunately, lessons learned were learned and taken forward with protocols that alleviated this or that incident from happening again, or at least mitigated to a certain extent that it wouldn't happen to that extent. More, I don't want to say control, but more listening, more confidence in your security element there, the GRS guys, to listen to what they have to say, and actually more training on the GRS side to convey to them, maybe this isn't such a good idea. How about we do this, right?
Yeah.
And give solutions. So it was a two-way street. I wasn't too happy with the initial story that came out. I finished that trip and went back right before the memorial that they had at headquarters. And I heard the story that was happening, and they were saying it was all security's fault. I mean, it was horrible. And that's what they're telling the fan. I was upset. Eventually, they actually have an honest assessment on what happened, how it happened, and how we can mitigate this from happening again. But initially, I was extremely upset about the story that was being told. And because I know what the extent of what three officers were down there, three staffers were doing to try to accomplish that mission for that team. Frustration on their parts leading up to that point, and a lot of anger afterwards, after I heard the initial story. A lot of guys wanted to quit at that point. I didn't. I felt obligated to stay and try to straighten the record on what happened and how our part can be better, right? How can we do better? Even if you meet that kind of resistance, or nobody's listening to you, how do you get them to listen to you? That kind of thing, right? Yeah, that was horrible. That was my third week in a year to come of that. bad times in general, '09 to 10. That was the high times of so on all the bases that were being hit out there, we had GRS guys assigned to them all. Khost was getting hit a lot. That's the other thing about this whole story at Khost. They were getting hit a lot. V-bits at the gates. They were getting hit all. It was like normal to hear that Khost V-bit at the gate. Oh, really? Imagine that. JBAD was getting hit. All the bases were getting V-bitted at the gates. And it's at the gates. Good. That's what the gates are out there for, right? They're built to withstand those kind of things. And we're going to lose some folks. Locals, probably too. But that's the job of those folks doing the searches. Unfortunately, yeah. So to put that in context, that wasn't the only thing happening on Khost. It was very normal to hear that they got V-bitted again at another gate. So it wasn't that was the environment they were in. So to think that you're going to alleviate all the security for anything that was going on there at the time is craziness.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that now and after the fact that, it happened and I know more about why it happened. But it's one of those things that never should have happened. And why did that happen? Communication, leadership, failure of leadership at several levels. One, to put that kind of pressure on somebody that hasn't been familiar with that kind of environment, right?
Yeah.
And one, leadership at that level out in the base to not listen to the professionals that are there to help you do your job. It was seen as a hindrance. That was another thing that changed. So one of the folks that was there was also, again, one of the chiefs later on at another site I went to had a totally different mindset on what he thought his GRS leadership was saying to him. He listened to every word that GRS said, and it's like, and we had those honest conversations. Let me have a conversation with you about how you want to support this mission, which is exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it took that for a lot of people to wake up.
Yeah.
And get things straight. And unfortunately, I was there, or unfortunately, I was there to, help in that regard, which I feel pretty good about what had happened after the fact. And it wasn't there to say, because I was saying it to our management back at headquarters. I was like, this is what I see happening. This is how I want to correct it. And they said, well, what's wrong with what's happening? I said, well, that's how people get killed. And I became that guy, like the Chicken Little, right?
Yeah.
I was like, well, do you know what's happening out here? This is the most active that our bases are getting hit since we've been here to this date. It's the highest organization. It was its highest highest number of people in a war zone like that since the Vietnam War, right? And it was the most active for bases being hit. And we specifically had GRS in all the bases that were getting hit. So, we need to do things differently. And they said, okay, well, over your year, yeah, they had like a kind of a lackadaisical kind of, okay, if that's what you want to do, no, do what you got to do. And then unfortunately, this happened. So that was not the time for me to say, I told you so. But it was an I told you so moment. And it was happening on every base. The protocols and the lack of communication between the security elements, us, our guys, and then the station management on exactly how to do things. So we had those guys, hey, we got to do these things strictly this way. And then, so that doesn't sit well with somebody who wants to get shit done another way. And that conversation, communication, leadership, all the way across the board. Yeah, I have that in notes to this day. Those are the things that happen. Lack of leadership and communication. Leadership being, as a leader, listening to who you're leading, and then as a follower, listening to your leader and giving honest feedback and having that kind of dialogue. Because ultimately you have the same goal, mission success, right? You're on the same mission, you're trying to do the same thing. And how do you get there? Have that discussion on how do you get there, in our case, how do you get there safely? In an environment that's not safe, right? Some guys are used to that environment and some guys aren't. I mean, they can't articulate that kind of stuff as well. So it's our fault too for putting guys in the wrong positions and putting them in places where they can't, they don't understand the environment to the extent that they can convey what security means in this environment. It's going to be ugly regardless. It's a bad place, bad things happen, but guess what? We're here to do a job. You're here to do a job. We're here to facilitate you to talk to folks, get intel, human intel stuff. That's what we do. That's what we facilitate. We make it happen. Get to yes. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be exactly how I was trained. It might be a little bit different, but let's do it so everybody's safe.
Let's move into the extraction or I guess not extraction, the into Tripoli. Can you talk about that?
The evacuation?
Yeah.
And 2014. So
just 2 years after Benghazi.
Yep. And so that's a great contrast in a successful mission where everything works. Leadership is happening, leadership is listening. There's no, so it was me having to have these conversations. They're listening to me about how we can do things to make things safe. But this is Tripoli in 2014. So I get there early in that year for my first trip into Libya. And post Benghazi, so there's still that looming over everybody's head, and even up to the highest levels at the White House. That's still fresh. That's still in the news media about why that happened and all this other stuff. And things are going sideways in Tripoli again. The Misratan army and the militia from Misrata is coming across, and they want to take Tripoli. And the militia that was there, occupying Tripoli at the time, they're going to go clash with the Misratans. Misratans are an army. They have vehicles, they have armored vehicles, they have tanks, and they're a legitimate army. The militias are the militias in Tripoli, and there's a lot of them. The ones that were in our area specifically supposed to, they were protecting the annex and the embassy, stuff like that. Things are going sideways. And then now the assault starts from the eastern side of Tripoli, and it's coming west, and they want to occupy Tripoli. So the attack's on, the fight's on. Things are getting hit. All the major nodes, right? The hospital near the airport, Tripoli International Airport, the oil fields, and the critical nodes, to gain access to the control of the city. They got the roadways from the east, and it's just going downhill, really fast. And in January, when I show up, the fighting hasn't started yet, but it kind of looks like it's kind of tending to that. So we got Haftar and his guys. He's doing the Libyan National Army thing. He's out east still. He's doing good things in Benghazi to make Benghazi safe. So post Benghazi, he's the one that goes in with his army, the LNA, to kind of, it's a political move too, that he's the one that's going to save Libya and Tripoli. He's the one that's going to be the guy who makes this place safe. So he actually does a good job out east and in Benghazi and that area to make everything safe. So his guys are going fisticuffs with all the militias that are out there. Meanwhile, and he's doing this big strategic move around south, and he's going to come in from the southwest of Tripoli to to take Tripoli himself. That's his whole plan.
Shit.
Mizratans are coming straight across from east to west, straight into Tripoli, occupy by force. Whoever's in our way is in our way, and they're gone. We're killing everything in our way. So we had the Zintan militia with us and are part of Tripoli, who are protecting us. Great dudes. Good structure. They were armed well. They were good fighters. All of them pretty much are. But they don't have tanks. They have gun trucks. They have Hiluxes with, Dishkas on the back and those kind of things. And the rockets and everything else that they're fighting with since the whole 2011 revolution, right? Overthrow of Gaddafi. But they can't keep up a fight with the Mizratans coming across. So Mizratans start coming across. They hit I can't remember when the last plane is that actually is able to land at the airport before they take the airport. But I think it was Lufthansa, who was the last commercial airlift or airplane that landed. And they stopped landing at Tripoli International Airport, and they were landing at, there was another airport there. It was a former Air Force base for Gaddafi. It's right on the coast. The name escapes me right now, but they landed there. Might have been Libyan Air as well, who was making a couple of flights. But that was it. Everybody else had stopped air traffic into us. So that was affecting us for getting our folks in and out, because that's how we were getting there, commercial air. The last flight out of the airfield in the north of Tripoli, State Department was able to get some of their folks on it from the embassy. And I want to say, non-essential or folks were put on that plane last minute. So this also is the airport that they're trafficking foreign fighters to and from Syria at the time. So we're intermixing State Department Americans with foreign fighters coming in and out of Syria at the time.
Oh man!
So this is an airport that's swarming with bad guys, but they're in transit, right? They're not there to fight; they're there in transit. We managed to get, or State Department manages to get some folks on that plane, and that was the last flight in or out of Libya at the time. So now whoever's in country is in country. You're stuck. We had a plan at the time. We started early on. The chief that was there allowed us. Great guy. He asked me to come to a meeting with him at the embassy because he didn't think they were talking security the way that we needed them to be talking security. And that was exactly what happened. They were, they're into the NEO thing, right? The NEO operations. Takes a long time for that to unfold and happen, right? Notifications have to go out. It takes a while for that to happen. And we weren't wanting to stick around for all that stuff. Because there's no need for us to stick around. So we came up with a plan initially to hunker down outside of the city at a farm for some people, and then everybody else is going to go over to Tunisia and wait there. Wait for all the fighting to happen, and then come back in. That was our initial plan. We had safe houses and stuff already set aside for minimal occupation to keep people there for eventually to wait for the fighting to end and then work our way back into Tripoli. But so I'm there January, February, and March, and I'm able to go home, get a flight out, and get a flight back early, because I go back and I was like, if I don't get back early, I might not get a flight because the flights are going to stop. There's no more flights in the country. So I'll be lucky to get a flight if I can get a flight, if somebody's right. And it was Lufthansa, I think, was the last ones into the Tripoli International. So I go back out there. I'm back long enough to say it's a bad situation. To my deputy chief, I said, hey, I would like to get back out there sooner than later. Not my full 90 days back in the States because it might not be there when I get back. So I'd like to get back out there to do some work. That was evacuation corridors, like getting ready to leave. Evacuation corridors, burying cache sites on the coast. So BLSs, surveying those for possible recovery or egress for us. Burying cache sites, establishing with the few ops folks that we had there, getting the safe sites, safe houses established, equipping those with food and water and living, food, water, blankets, shelter, all that stuff. We had one in town, we had one out of town. And evacuation corridor, all that. So it was a lot of work to do. Emergency, like solar panels to charge rechargeable batteries for things, and we were doing all this stuff. Building out go bags for everybody, go bags, bug out bags, the whole thing. Establishing policies and procedure, and it wasn't a hard thing to do at the time because there was something exploding multiple times a day.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything to convince anybody to do all these things. And then there was
This shit was going on for a long time before this happened.
so the evacuation happens in July. So from January to July, it just downhill in that. January, February. What is it? The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and you can't. We know why it's happening, but when I'm back in D.C. in headquarters trying to get stuff done, it's like, how do I get a visa to Libya? How do we get people Libyan visas? Well, that whole part of the government had already shut down. There's people working in these buildings, but they're not being paid. They're just there because that's what they did for their living, and they're just there. There's no more government. So there's the GNA and the GNC that are competing to be the new government for Libya at the time. Then there's Haftar and the Libyan National Army out east. He's getting ready to be the guy, the next, whatever he wanted to call himself, king or whatever of Libya. Take Gaddafi's spot. Then the GNC, GNA, all the militias fighting for control of their turfs. That was a mess. And just to get across town, to get through militias, from one militia to another,
Damn.
it was a nightmare. A lot of guns being pointed at people, a lot of fire, warning shots, right? But it doesn't matter if you get hit with a warning shot; it's gonna hurt just the same.
Yeah.
It was a mess. Funny thing happens always in bad times, though. We were at a meeting. We take the chief to a meeting. It's at a restaurant downtown. It's at a cool place in downtown, very scenic. The Marcus Aurelius Arc is a restaurant right near it. Very cool place to hang out.
No shit.
So I go in with the chief. He goes to have his meeting. I go back out with the guy that I went with, the other GRS guy. We're having a conversation. I don't want to leave him out there by himself for too long because he's monitoring outside activity and letting me know inside, hey, people are forming. Because there was a lot of that going on. A lot of just random fighting on the street. So he's monitoring that while I go inside. I come back outside. And several funny things happen during this time where it's just Wild West, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got guns and they're shooting just randomly. So goes to do this meeting, and I come back out to talk with my guy out front, and somebody behind me, about 20 feet maybe, starts shooting a gun. And it's a pistol. It's not an AK or anything. It's some sort of pistol. And it's one of those drills that you have, right? That you spin around and start going to town, right? So as my back was to the shooter, I spin around and I'm going for my gun, and I see that this guy's facing down the street and he's just shooting his pistol to clear the street because he doesn't want these people near him on the street. So he's shooting his gun, like he's yelling at him, "Get out of the way." So I was like, what the fuck, man? And the guy that's with me, he's doing, so we're, as he has to get over to the side a little bit, so he's in line with the shooter and not me, offline with me. So he's doing the same thing, going over to the side. He's getting ready to go burn this guy down, and I'm spinning around like it's that drill on the range. And then it ends up to be this guy's just cranking off rounds to clear the streets. So I was like, all right, that's whatever. Okay, don't. And I'm looking around like nobody saw us going for our guns. Like I wish, we still kind of not blending in, but we didn't show our hand, right? And too much. And it's like, I gotta tuck the gun back away and let's get back to business. Another one was a El Prez, El Prez drill.
Yeah.
We get to another spot and we get hemmed up at a checkpoint, and they start calling, "Hey, I can't make this decision. I can't make this decision. I got to call my boss, the Libyan, the militia guy that's there." All right, call him. He calls one guy. "I can't make the decision. I got to call my boss." "All right, call your boss." Well, I get out of the car. I told everybody, "Hey, stay in." Or the ops guy that we had, I stay in the car, and the other GS guy, driver, I said, "I'm going to go to the trunk of the car, the front of the car, put out a map, explain to him what we wanted to do, and I'm going to face you. You face this way. You watch my back. I'll watch back behind the vehicle. And if you see something with your hands, just point in a direction, right? 2 that way, 3 that way, whatever. So I know which direction they're starting to mass because they're just curious always. But just so I know where everybody's at without me having to look around constantly, right? I did the same thing for him. And there was a gun truck with a Dishka sitting right there. So that was like the end all be all, but nobody was on it. So it was going to take him some time to get up there. So we had a little bit of time to work with. And at one point I have a guy with a shotgun, this young kid, he's wired for sound. He's ready, oh, who's this? We gotta get it on, right? So he was my most concern. Like he was on my thoughts the most. It's like, dang, this guy's just gonna go half cock in a minute and start shooting. So I was like, okay. So my hands are on the hood, and I'm thinking, and I'm getting these signals like 2 right behind you, right? So I look behind me. There's 2 guys there, and they're with their AKs and they're posturing, to intimidate us. And I was like, okay, so guy with the shotgun, 2 guys with the AK behind me. I was like, I got this. This is like the El Prez drill.
Yeah.
I was like, and the guy, the ops guy we had in the car, I get on the radio and I was like, hey, this is going to be the first live fire El Prez drill. I was like,
That's what you said?
Yeah. I was like, I got this. This is going to be the coolest story ever.
They're going to have to rename the drill.
And, a couple of chuckles inside the vehicle. And and the end of the story, though, that it worked out. I didn't have to shoot anybody. But dude with the shotgun, that was in my mind. If anybody raised a gun, that was going to be my thing. El Prez is on it, like beep.
Yeah.
Hands off the drill, and then start going to town, right? And we joke about that even today, about me almost getting an opportunity to do a live fire El Prez drill. But things like that happen. But anyway, things are going sideways. I tell my chief back at headquarters, hey, this is it might not be there when I get back. If I go on my schedule, I need to get back out there to help out. We need as many guys on the ground, and I need more contractors to go with me, because it was a small staff, right? And I do that. I come back for a month. I get my orders and go back out. A couple guys join me out there on the last flights into Libya. Ends up to be 16 of us GRS guys, which was the most of the whole station. At the time, MAGTF, the Marines, had flown in to secure the embassy and the annex. So it already deteriorated to that point. We can't do any more work because either the folks we need to talk to can't make it to us because they're getting threatened. If they go talk to the Americans, then, kind of you're with us or you're against us kind of threats. Or you go talk to the Americans, we're going after your family. All those things were going on at the time. So we had a bunch of no-shows. Our local guard force wasn't showing up to work because they were getting threatened too. And they had sometimes crossed the fighting to get to us. And one guy did that. One of the local guards there, he came to work one day and he said, I can't go home. I'm worried about my family. But if I go, there's fighting. I got to cross the fighting. And he stayed there for a couple of days. And then eventually he left because he was concerned about his family. And then we never saw him again. So it was just us, whatever. We had a slice of the MAGTF Marines that were there, and 2 of our static security guys. And that was it. The Zintani militia, who was always camped or parked, when I say camped, they were parked out front in gun trucks to help secure the area. Well, they were in the fight already, so they weren't doing that anymore. A lot of fighting going on, sporadic fighting during the day and the night, constant stuff going on. Missiles flying everywhere, the rockets and stuff that, what is that, the one, the grad rocket or something that just flies off and just wherever it goes and lands, right? Some of them impact our camp, and it's not like we were, we know the missile types that are flying around that area, and it's not something that anybody could have aimed and hit deliberately, but we're just in the crossfire of all this stuff going on. So we're getting hit with Dishka rounds, we're getting hit with random rockets, and so we're planning an evacuation. We need to get out of the way. We're not here to do the tactical stuff, the tactical intel collection piece of it. Task Force Green was there with us. They're very helpful in a lot of the prep and the planning. So there was all of the right people in the right place in a bad time to make this happen. And the support and the leadership that allowed us to do what we needed to do to get out of there or to plan an evacuation. What ended up happening, the day that we were going to tell the ambassador that we were leaving, and the RSO that was there, to let them know, hey, take our numbers off the books. We're good. We're not gonna be part of your numbers in this NEO thing, and don't worry about us. We got it. We got ourselves. We'll take care of ourselves. Well, the ambassador was like, "What? You guys are leaving? You guys are leaving? What? Well, wait, where are you going?" And so we had to divulge some of the plan that we had in the safe houses and stuff like that. But we just said we're going to go camp out. We're going to hide outside of the city in a place that we have for us to live there for a couple of weeks or a month, however long we need to, food and water, all the stuff. And we have a clear route to Tunisia to supply that thing. And some locals that would probably help facilitate us getting food and water, more food. And then the rest of the folks are going to go drive out of country and then wait it out, either go home or next door in the neighboring country in Tunisia to if they could stay there, just stay there and wait, or go back home and help us from there. What was the other? Malta was another place they could have went to go support us from Malta or Sigonella or any other place to stay by somewhere and support us with stuff. The task force at the time was based out of Stuttgart, so they could have facilitated anything from Stuttgart coming our way, not as a response force, but for supplies and sustainability. So it was going. When we went to go tell her that, there was while we were there, strange thing happened at the embassy. So it was a normal trip. It's only a mile down the road from us. We go through the neighborhoods to get there, and usually you hit the local guard force is on the street, and there's cops, local cops, living police that are there, and then you go through that, You meet another checkpoint. There's a chicane. You get to this barrier, and that's the actual King Kong wall gate that it was just built there with a nice little secure booth. Nobody was there.
No shit.
Yeah, and it was the weirdest feeling. It's like one of those times when this is so quiet, it's scary. Something's getting ready to happen.
Yeah.
Because when the locals aren't there, they're
Yep.
privy to something that's happening. Well, next door to the embassy was a military barracks that was on the target list. Unbeknownst to us and anybody else, except for the locals, the Mizratans had targeted. There was an oil field across the highway, so we're talking maybe a mile away. And then the military barracks that were like right next to the embassy. So we're going there to deliver the message to the ambassador that, hey, we're out. We're all packed up. We're going to leave in a couple days. And don't worry about us, right? We're locking the gates behind us and we'll be in Tunisia if you need us. And so I'm in the right front seat of this car, our Land Cruiser, as we round the corner. And I got our deputy chief and our task force team lead with us to go deliver the message to the ambassador that we're leaving. And we round the corner and it was like crickets. I was like, where is everybody? So slow roll, what is going on here? Right? And I get out of the vehicle and I go knock. This is armored glass bunker that the control arm, the control gate is being operated in. And there's usually somebody in the booth. Couldn't tell if there's anybody in the booth. So I go to the booth, I get out of the vehicle, I go to the booth, and it is the most quiet. It was just eerie, like silence, no birds, no city noises, nothing. And I go up to the window and I had my pocket knife, so I took it out and wrapped it on the window. And I was like, hey, I see somebody. It's hunkered down right there, right? And I knocked on the window. This is armored glass, so I don't even know if he could hear it. But eventually, peeks up over the counter, and I had my badge, my access badge, my MC badge. I was like, hey, it's like, we need to get in. So he reaches up, pushes the button, gates open. It's like, all right, let's go, let's get in. I get in the vehicle, and usually there's some activity in the embassy compound. It's a small compound, but usually there's something. There's people walking, something. Nothing. And I was like, as soon as I said, this is so silent, this is the weirdest thing ever, that's when the attack starts. From wherever they were at, they were starting to shoot at the barracks and the oil fields, right? Disc rounds. And then then it went from total silence to the loudest thing you ever heard in your life. And I can, as we're, gas, get to it was a brand new part of the embassy. They just built it out. And they hadn't occupied it yet. It was hardened structures, right? The chancery and everything just finished building that stuff, and they were getting ready to move in. Then it just became, even in our armored car, it was the loudest. It was the loudest thing I ever heard in my life. But almost like a Tetris game, you can see it's a concrete block wall, right? This wall is disintegrating because it's taken round. It's not direct fire stuff. They're not shooting at the embassy. They're shooting at the barracks and the oil fields. But all those rounds were in a beaten zone, the Dishka rounds, because they're just rocking that thing. And those rounds are just flying down range somewhere. The wall is disintegrating. It was just the weirdest thing. Gas to the chancery, and I'm yelling the new code to the front door, and we're going to drive as close as we can because there's a curb, some bushes, some steps before you get to the front door of the new chancery, and that's where they said they would be. They're in the new chancery, making comms with headquarters and talking back and forth, State Department stuff, on what they're going to do. We're gas. We're racing towards the chancery, and I'm yelling out the new code because they're the guys in the back. So the deputy chief's there and the task force guy. They're already in the scat mode. I said, open the right door and scat out the right door. I'll be right behind you. And because I'm grabbing all the stuff in the car, right? And as I'm grabbing all the stuff, putting it in my go bag, I was like, hey, get out the right side and go to the door. If you get there before me, it's whatever it is, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, I just kept saying the code to what it wasn't 1, 2, 3, 4, but it was whatever it was. And as soon as that door opened, like gone. Deputy gets out. He's on the right side of the car, sitting behind me. He takes a minute. He ducks his head a little bit, puts his backpack on, and then takes off running. Task force guy, you know, he's in a little bit better shape. He passes him, and the floor's slippery, right? So it's the hard marble or whatever it is they put on those floors that when it's clean, it's slippery.
Yeah.
They're full head of steam towards the door, and I'm trying to call inside the chancery to the RSO that's there, and he's not answering. But he's now in the bunker, and I don't know that he's there, or he's like 2 rooms deep into this chancery. It's all hardened structure, and you can hear the rounds hitting the building and all around us, and it was just the loudest thing ever. As soon as the task force, he's out, I'm out and running. I told the other GS guy who's driving, I was like, come out my side. We're going this way because that was where all the impact was happening. Come out my side. Let's go in. I started running, and I'm yelling the code for the guy because I see him struggling at the door. At the code. So first thing when this task force guy he's running, he's full head of steam, maybe I don't know 20 feet. So he stops because he's getting ready to come to the door, slides into the door, and smash. He smashes into the door, and he's trying to punch the code in. Or the deputy chief, he's getting out. He's got a full head of steam. He slides, smashes into the task force guy. He's still trying to punch the code. I get out. I'm running towards the door, and I see what's happening, this little clown show thing happening. And I'm yelling the code, and he's punching it in and punching it in. And whoever was inside heard that somebody was hitting the buttons, and then it was one of the RSOs that opened the door, and then in we go. And then as I'm running to the chancery. I motioned to their follow car that was behind us. We had 2 GRS guys in the follow car. I'm grabbing my stuff. I grab the med kit and my go bag, and I'm running, and I wave them like come inside because our cars aren't going to take this kind of beating. Like, what's going on out here?
Yeah.
So I motioned them to come in. My guy, the driver, he's in, and I'm peeking outside the door, waiting for our other guys. I'm keeping it open a little bit so they don't struggle to get in the door. And I'm peeking outside, and they're like, "What are they doing? What are they waiting on?" Right? And they thought they were safe in the car. So I motioned them to come inside, and they're like, "No, we're going to stay here." And I was like, "No, come over here." And so I run out there, and I opened the door, and I was like, "Hey, get your ass inside, because there's more protection in there than there is in this car." And you could see this wall like a Tetris game, just disintegrating.
Holy
and you can hear the
shit.
impacts of the disc rounds hitting the building. It's loud as shit. And even more so inside. You couldn't hear inside because of the impacts of on the building. You had to be face to face talking to somebody for them to hear you. And that's exactly when we all got into the chancery. And we're talking to the ambassador, like, "Hey, we got our way out. Don't worry about us." And we're still heavily breathing because everybody's doing that 20, just a 20 feet sprint, but we're all just winded. We're leaning across this table talking to her, like, "Hey, we're done. We're out. We got a plan. We're out of here." She's like, "Wait a minute now. What are you guys doing?" And it's like, "Well, don't worry about us, Mr. RSO. I mean, we're good. We're going. We're leaving. Don't worry about us. Nobody's going to be at the embassy. You can have your MAGTF Marines back. We'll bring them over here first, and then we'll scat. Or you guys can go over there. Whatever you guys want to do. It's your facility too. But we're gone." And she said, "Well, wait a minute. Where are you going?" And we told her the plan, and she's like, "Well, we're coming with you." "Well, wait a minute. And she's talking to Ambassador Kennedy, who was back in D.C. for State Department, answering the mail on this side. And she's telling them, "Hey, the guys at the annex has a way out of here, and we're going to go with them, seeking approvals and all that kind of stuff." And they're like, "Okay, if that's the plan, then that's the plan, take the flag down and go out with the annex." And then that became another issue because
Yeah.
they have third country nationals that they had. The Bengalis were at another camp that came and did all the servicing, the local maintenance, cleaning, and all that stuff. They said plus 86 Bengalis that are
Holy
at the southern
shit.
camp. I'm there with our chief. I said, we cannot take responsibility for them. If that's the case, we got to go on our own. And the task force guy is like, yeah, no, we're not taking those guys. They're either on their own or they're with you guys and we're out. And so she's conveying this message back to DC. And the conclusion was, okay, they're going to do their own thing. They'll make their own way out, or stay. It's up to them. And we'll go out with you. And we hadn't planned on, there was only 20 something of us, and ended up to be 154 people total with embassy folks. And for me and the staffing on the GRS side of the house, we had enough people for our people, and that was it. So then it became trying to facilitate, 150, the rest of the embassy folks, and the ambassador and her dog.
And her dog.
Yeah. She was supposed to come out with me and my chalk. I was taking the senior level folks from the annex. They were going to be in my car, and we're going to go out. So that made sense for her to be in that car. She wanted to ultimately be in the last vehicle, which is fine. I tried to say, well, we can go to the border, and I can wait on the Libyan side so you can be the official last person out of Libya, but we need to get you out of here. She wasn't having that. She wanted to be in the last vehicle, and she wasn't quite in the last vehicle because we had some maneuver vehicles with fighters in it in the last vehicle, but she was happy with where she ended up sitting. We decided, we had a timeline figured out on our own for just us, and it was 2 days from the time we made the notification to be out of there at a certain time of the day on 2 days. In 2 days, with destruction plans. Everybody back at the annex was already doing that, burning, crushing, shredding things. They're getting the place ready. Then we ended up having to wait on, our State Department colleagues. They wanted to bring all their stuff, the big MRAP that was sitting in their, like, yeah, no, you're going to have to leave that here. We don't want, so our idea was as low profile as we can be. We don't want to look menacing. We don't want to look aggressive. We don't want to look like a fighting force to invite any fighting.
Unwanted
right?
attention.
Yeah, so we're going to capitalize on a break-in or a lull in fire in their normal day, every day consistently. They started fighting and they stopped fighting at consistent times of the day. The morning was the best for us to give us as much time to do all the shredding and burning and all that stuff, prepare to go. So it was like 6 o'clock in the morning was the last window between they stopped fighting, morning prayers, and then from then to, we had about a 2-hour window before the next sporadic fighting started. So they typically prayed, they ate, and then they refit the fight, right? They go back to their camps, bases, wherever they're from. They put more ammo on the vehicles, get ready for the day's fight, and get ready for the night's fight. Most of the fighting was happening at night. And so the height of the fighting was easily from 11 o'clock in the morning to 5 in the morning. And the ambassador wanted to leave at, I don't know, for whatever reason. She said 1 o'clock in the morning. 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And we were like, well, that's the worst time to go. Everybody's on the streets fighting each other at that point. It's just, no, we can't do that. We're going to leave at 6. If you're with us, then we're leaving at 6. We're going to start marshaling and leaving at 6 in groups. At the beginning of our 2-hour window, we're starting to leave in groups. It wasn't going to take us 2 hours to do that, but eventually it did because we had, I don't even know, 30, however many vehicles that was to get 154 people out.
Yeah, that's a lot of vehicles.
Yeah, some 30-something vehicles. I think it was 34 vehicles. Suburbans, Land Cruisers, Hiluxes. And we were doing all the command and control for it. The annex was. Had almost a GRS in every vehicle in the front and back of each truck that went. I was going to take our VIPs in my vehicle, minus the ambassador who wanted to ride in another vehicle for whatever her reasons were. Yeah, and then leave at 6. We had just built a rear entrance to the annex at the time where it was a small place. You can only go with that many vehicles. We had planned it out to where we're staging down the center line of this villa, and we can stage perfectly pointed straight out the gate. So we'll marshal all the vehicles again and point it straight out the gate, and then in chalk order, we'll leave in groups. And so we told the State Department, okay, this is what we got to do. We task organize everybody, everybody in the vehicles, and come in the back gate, so you can go in that one, and behind the flow out the gate, right?
Yeah.
Morning of departure, some 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, they start showing up with their first vehicles, and they're coming in the front gate. And I don't know who did it. We were the ones controlling the front gate. It was Americans there at the front gate. They opened the front gate so they can get in. You can hear the fighting going on in town. The city was already on fire. The city was literally burning. Tripoli is on fire. Everywhere around us, everything's burning. And so that was the smell you smelled the whole time during this whole, just whatever toxic fumes there were. That's what we were smelling and breathing the whole time. But as they're coming in, it's almost like fog, because at that time of the night, that's the heaviest fighting. So there's just debris from explosions and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And impacts and all those kind of things. And it was like a fog bank. But so whoever opened the gate, let the State Department folks in. And now we have, vehicles crunching into each other and just all messed up everywhere. That was a shit show. We had to get, under control. And so we took all the vehicles, all the keys to the vehicles, and put them in order that we needed them in. And that was a shit show just because of the space that we had. We didn't have any space.
Yeah.
But that took most of the morning just to do that. Then at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, ambassadors getting antsy. We finally got all the embassy folks with us on our side, and we're waiting for 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, the first chalk is ready to go, and it's a communications advon or advance is kind of what we considered it. Had satellite communications. It was going to be one of the in that part of Libya, in that part of the world, the satellite that we had was at a 10-degree angle. So it's low on the horizon. So to get any kind of mobile communications, it ain't happening. So we were going to kick out, static communication sites. They're going to get static, point all the antennas at a 10-degree angle at this azimuth, and then get comms with all the other elements in DoD that were tracking our communications and our movement. And another vehicle that was going to leave later on, and they were going to leapfrog. So they would be static, have time to set up, and then they set up communication. Then that one would, leapfrog over, and then in between that, all of our vehicles were going to, roll past them and use them as checkpoints, right?
Yeah.
Communication checkpoints. And at 4:30, 5 o'clock, ambassador was getting antsy. She's like, "We need to leave now," because it was bad. I mean, you can hear the fighting; it was loud. But we were used to that. It had been going on for months at this point. We're like, yeah, no. You hear that? It's going, no. Well, I don't want to drive through that.
Yeah.
I don't want to drive. Why would you want to drive through that? No, we'll wait at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, they'll stop shooting, and then we'll go. And it took all of our deputy chief, that's what his sole job was, to calm her down and say, hey, we know what we're doing. We're going to leave at the right time. Calm her down. But up until the moment we left, she was complaining the whole time. We need to get out of here. We need to go. And then 6 o'clock. Like magic, 6 o'clock. Went from the loudest thing you ever heard to dead silence.
Yeah.
Right? And then the sun's coming up. Kind of has the most cool temperature that it's going to be in Libya during the time of day, which is another thing we were considering on, heat exhaustion and those kind of things. And at 6 o'clock, gates open, first truck leaves. And then I think it was every 15-minute increments, another truck would leave. And it was going like clockwork. It worked. And so personally, I was in the third truck. That's supposed to be the command and control, or the command vehicle, not control vehicle, but all the C2 folks in that one. And it was, other than the ambassador who wanted to ride somewhere else. It worked out. We ran into some dudes and the Zintanis that were our friends, and they knew who we were. But we didn't also want to tip our hat to them either. We didn't tell them we were leaving either. And we saw them, and by the time they probably saw me in my chalk and all the vehicles, because I probably had 6 or 7 with me, they probably knew at that point that we were leaving because they had already seen another chalk in front of me, 5 or 6 vehicles, and then the communication ad one was just 3 or 4 vehicles. One was a big like delivery truck, bread truck, with all the communication stuff on it. It had antennas, all the stuff with magnets on it stuck to it, and it's the porcupine of antennas. So we passed them, and they were doing exactly what we knew they were doing because we had been, working with them this whole time, refitting to fight, right? Taking care of the wounded and injured, and putting more ammo, cleaning out the brass of their the Hiluxes, and putting more ammo in it, and wiping down their guns, the dishkas and all that stuff. And they were doing all that stuff, and that was like normal stuff. And we'd see them and wave as we passed by, say, "Hey guys, deuces."
Yeah.
So it worked. I mean, it worked. And like I mentioned before, a vehicle broke down. We had to end up towing that thing. It was kind of a funny looking thing coming across the Libya-Tunisian border, because everybody thought it got hit and all this other stuff. And but we said that every chalk is self-sufficient. So whether if you had to tow a vehicle, you guys that are towing each other, gas, everybody had gas in their cars. We were hoarding gas up to that point because all the gas stations were. Those are the things that were also being occupied by the Misratans because everybody needed gas for their vehicles, and they continued the fight. Everybody was fighting for the gas points. It wasn't necessarily a gas station, but it was where they had all the bottles and jugs of gas.
Yeah.
And up to that point, we'd been going to these places to get more gas for us. So we had plenty of gas. Made a few people uncomfortable because now we have gas in the back of our Hiluxes, and what if that gets hit and lights fire? It's like, well, you probably have a fire. I mean, what can you do? What can you do? I mean, it is. We got what we have, right?
How long did it take? How long from 6 a.m. to
24 hours.
24 hours a 24-hour evacuation route?
Yep.
With 150 people?
That was brutal.
I'll bet.
And we'd been up for 3 days before that. So it was a continuous, all the destruction plan. We were up. It's not, every once in a while, I'd say, hey, man, if you guys need a break, go grab a couple of winks, right? Go get some sleep. As eventually you're going to pass out if you don't get any sleep. Go get sleep. And they're like, no, boss, I got this. And they're crushing things. And so over time, all of the mechanical stuff that we had, the shredders, the nail guns and everything else broke because it was overused. We didn't have it. And we had multiples of everything, but everything broke down. So then it was a burn pit. Then there was literally crushing, like sledgehammer exercise drills.
Holy shit.
Crushing radios and stuff. So, that's what we had.
Damn.
And we're trying to crush things and then crush it and then burn it, throw it in a burn pit. Go bags. I tried to stress that point. Hey, go bags only. Nothing else comes with you. Whatever's in your go bag or what you're wearing, that's it. Don't leave anything behind. No guns, no ammo. Bring all whatever you can fit in your go bag, in your go bag. In your bug out bag, that's all the livable stuff, right? Go bag, ammo and water. That's all you put in that thing. Maybe a snack or two. If you have a power bar or something like that, that's all that goes in that thing.
Yeah.
That's going to be on you the whole time. So they were pretty good about that. And so it only took us, it's only a 3.5, wasn't long to get to the border.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the first 30 minutes were probably the most, probably contentious, right? Because that's where all the fighting was happening. I mean, we're going through an active war zone to get past all this. So whether it was a mistaken identity, itchy trigger finger, all those things, we knew we weren't going to get targeted because we knew that Ms. Rottens hadn't made it to this point where this road that we were taking, we can take it without only crossing our guys, the Zintan militia. So first 30 minutes, everybody's queued up, heads up, eyes up, head on a swivel, all those kind of things. Be ready to, get in a fight and maneuver the vehicles. For the drivers in the vehicles, they were all GRS guys. So we're going to maneuver, typical maneuvering, fire maneuver kind of stuff if we have to. But gas, keep heading west. Worst case, just keep heading west, and we'll link up at all these different community checkpoints along the route. We got out without, it's perfect. Quiet time of the day, nice friendly waves on the way out by our friend the Zintanis, and done. We do some other meetings along the way to facilitate our evacuation to the border, and it only takes 3.5, 4 hours maybe, I'm thinking, to get to the border. But from that, so we go south of the city and follow the terrain, which is a huge seawall way inland, and follow that all the way to the Tunisian border. And so we're way down south in Tunisia, and when most of the time it took to get up north to Tunis was the rest of the 24 hours that we had, like the 18 hours that we had left, right?
Yeah.
We had to stop at an airfield, as we had to drop off the State Department packs at an airfield so they can get on a plane and fly to wherever it is they flew. I think they flew to Sigonella or something. They had a plane waiting on us. So then the rest of the drive to Tunis was just our office folks.
Okay.
So, and about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning the next day, we pulled into the embassy in Tunis. Totally beat, falling asleep at the wheel, all those things. Hey, wake up. Let me take over for a minute, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long drive. It was brutal. But yeah, and like I was saying before, probably the most successful evacuation that you never heard about.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because it worked. We had 154 people from Tripoli at its worst to Tunis unscathed. One vehicle that broke down on us, and that was it. Nobody hurt, no shots fired, nothing.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that was pretty neat. And it's probably half a dozen people that I can really attribute that to. Task Force TL, the chief, the deputy chief, the 2 operations officers that were in there doing that. I'm going to miss somebody. And just great people, all the right people to do that at the right time in a bad time in Libya, right? That's exactly what it took. Support from the top down.
Somebody wrote a book on this, right?
Our analyst wrote a book, like The Darkest Hour or something like that is the name of it. I'll send you that one. It's a good read. That's from her perspective. She was actually, I identified her as a part of all the group. I ran out of GRS guys. I ran out of fighters, barrel-chested freedom fighters, right? I ran out of them. It's like, so who's left that I can put in a seat that's going to help me or help us get out? And, help me help the group to get out. And I was like, well, Rain, I don't know if I should say her call sign because I think she changed it for the book purposes. So anyway, she was good. She was very motivated. She was good at her job as an analyst. But if we went to the range to shoot guns, she wanted to know, yes, I need to shoot my gun because I haven't shot it in a while. All right, come on, let's go do this, right? she was very proactive in all the stuff. How are we getting out? Asking like good questions during the whole planning process. She wasn't like directly involved in it, but as an analyst, we were using her a lot for her information on what she thought, the routes, the Zintanis, intent, what their possible, actions were, the Mizratans, what they were possibly going to do, and what's Haftar going to do with the LNA? Are they going to sit this one out for a little bit and wait for everything to happen to come? All this stuff. She's great at what she did. And so I asked her to sit shotgun with another GRS dudes in the back of my chalk. So she was going to manage the comms, right? So GRS driver can drive. And he can talk on the radio too, but just so he doesn't have his hands full and all the stuff to worry about, she's going to talk through, or TC is going to talk through our analyst. He's going to say what to say, hold the mic for him to talk into, and all those kind of things, right? And so I told her not to worry about it. I'm not going to make you a GRS person overnight. You're just going to help, TC do what he does. And make sure that if somebody takes a wrong turn and that everybody stays behind me, keep an eye on where I am at and don't let anybody take wrong turns. Don't let anybody get out of the vehicles. If you see somebody get out of the vehicles, then speak up about it on the radio. Or if you see something, everybody's got that responsibility. If you see something, say something so we can have eyes on it, shots fired, whatever it is. Gun trucks or whatever it is they say, right? So she tells a pretty good story. It turns out I may have given her too much responsibility for some stuff. I don't know. I still honestly don't think so. She performed flawlessly through this whole thing. I had no issues with her at all before, during, or after. I thought she did a great job. It just kind of messed her up in the head a little bit, unfortunately. And I apologize to her. I wish I could to her about that, but it's what we had to work with, and I was left with task organizing with what I had on the ground, and I guess even contrary to what she believed in herself, I believed that she can do it, and she did it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so good on her. She did a great job. She did exactly what I would have wanted. Did everything, and she was the linguist for our chalk too. So if I got out of the vehicle, and so I told her, if I get out of the vehicle, you get out of the vehicle and come see me, and we'll go talk to this Libyan. And we had to do that several times along the egress route to help facilitate the next leg. From militia to militia, we had to be handed off from one to the other. And then at the border, same thing. And she did great. She did flawlessly. She was a good shooter. She knew how to handle herself with a gun. Another good quality to have, right? And
especially in that scenario.
Yeah, and I had confidence in her to do what it is I was asking her to do, else I wouldn't have asked her to do it. And I said, I got her and TC together. I said, you know what? You don't worry about being so, feeling responsible. And she was that kind of a person, which is great. Another great characteristic of hers that I capitalize on to use her to help us get out. To help me manage the chaos. Very level-headed, took direction well, gave direction well. I mean, she did flawlessly. And
you're not in contact with her anymore?
No.
I'll bet she sees this. I'll bet she sees this.
Yeah. Well, if she does, she did a great job. I told her that at the time, too, when we finally get to the border. And then when we finally get to Tunis at the embassy, I said, hey, you did a great job. And she seemed fine at the time. And even during, the book is a good read because she actually.
What is the name of the book?
I think The Darkest Hour.
Okay.
Or In My Darkest Hour, something like that. And that's normal too. For all of us that have been through this, to have, some kind of issues with it after the fact, right? I mean, that's like normal.
Yeah.
And that's I hope that she gets that out of the whole ordeal too. It's like, hey, she's no different than any of us that went through similar things, right?
Yeah.
We all go through that, and we all have to have help sometimes afterwards, or maybe later on down the road. Her time was then, and I think part of the writing of the book was probably
Therapeutic.
Yep, for her to like deal with the situation and somehow just get it out there and say it. I mean, it was probably helpful. I get that. It's a well-written book. I don't know. It's interesting to me. It's interesting to me because I know what was going on at the time when she describes things, and I know who the people she's talking to because she had to change the call signs and for like
Obvious
she was
reasons.
told to change the call sign, so she did. Great read. I would have never known that she was going through that at the time. Like the way she goes, it describes her. I want to say her. Questioning her confidence in herself to do what I asked her to do, because I always asked her to do something. When I asked her to do something, I said, "You okay with that? If not, let me know, because that's okay." But just let me know. And she's like, no, I'm okay with that. And no, it wasn't just a like do this thing. It was like you want to do this and then get with me or somebody else, and we'll coach you through exactly what we're asking you to do. Like manage a radio, turn a radio on, what the radio looks like, how to change the channels in a radio, right? Those kind of things. For the GRS guy that's with her, so he doesn't have his hands tied up and he's trying to drive a vehicle.
Yeah.
Right. This is how you change the channel on a radio. This is how you talk on a radio. This is all how it functions. These are the checkpoints along the way. These are the things you have to be aware of. So when we're through checkpoints, she's in the trail vehicle. So those are the things that she had to do en route.
Yeah.
Like trail vehicle up when we're past a certain point, right? And she was right on the mark with all that stuff the whole way through. Yeah. Great job. Told her that then, thanked her for it. She performed flawless. And I didn't see her after that. We kind of all kind of disbanded to the winds at that point. And then apparently, she's having, she had, I don't know how she's doing now, but perfectly normal. I mean, that's nothing against her for that. It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
But she did a great job.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a quick break and then we'll start to wrap it up.
Sounds good.
All right.
Yeah.
What's going on, Patreon? Join me on Vigilance Elite Patreon for a live video teleconference.
He proceeds to look at me and one of my other comrades, and he's like, hey, go ahead and put the body on the hood.
On the hood of what? So you fucking took out number 3.
Having that natural instinct to react and to do what needs to be done, you can't train for that.
You were hand selected again to come on as a fucking operator.
A car bomb was driven into one of our vehicles on the convoy, and we did what we were trained to do.
They were taking kids and filling their bicycle tires with explosives, and they would have the kids ride their bike towards the convoy and start detonating their fucking bicycles.
I got up on the top of the roof and, started engaging, targets, and you can see the guys are running back and forth. Sure enough, they're still coming. And, I just engaged a single round to each guy. They were from all different directions. We cut out murder holes in the walls.
You're 19 years old and you just got in your first engagement and shot your first man. Your fucking service record is amazing. I've worked with a lot of different operators from all different branches, especially when I was at CIA. If I could go back and operate with somebody that I didn't get to before, you would be fucking top of my list, dude. And I don't say that shit to very many people.
All right, we're back from the break. We just got done with the evacuation out of Tripoli. Wrapping up your agency career, retired. Let's get into some of the stuff that was happening after you left. Or kind of, when did the wreck happen?
My motorcycle wreck.
Yeah.
Well, that was that was a bad time. So as all this stuff is happening in my careers, and COVID hits, and everything's shutting down, everybody's life is going to shit. I just had a hard time with that whole thing, right? The vaccination thing and all this other stuff, and all the things that are starting to happen in our country that are just frustrating me. And then I'm in for the first time in 14 years of deploying and spending time in the war zones, excluding the contractor time and the previous military time. I'm in an office job, and I am not that person. And I was adapting to all these changes in my life at the time, which is horrible. It was just, I hate those. And so you have to do it in your career to do headquarters time, right? But I was never a career guy, so I don't care, right? It's like, I just want to do the job, and my job is out in the field. Or being a manager, right? But doing that from the field, easily done from the field. I never got the manage from a workstation back at headquarters thing, right? Sure, people do that, but I'm not that kind of person. I got to be on the ground with the troops and all that kind of stuff. So I'm adjusting to life back in. So it ends up ultimately being the best thing that ever could happen to me, being back that long and just readjusting to life back in regular communities without being in a war zone. But I'm having issues with that. I'm still Mr. Anger Man, and I'm drinking a lot. And COVID hits. Now, what else is there to do, right? You can't go anywhere. Everything's shut down. I find ways to, get outside and do some exercises and stuff like that just to get fresh air. Zombie land. Nobody's out on the streets. Can't go to work. Work shut down. There's no information. I mean, all this stuff. I'm cooped up in an apartment. And I'm, there's somebody sharing the misery with me, but which is just tough. So the first opportunity to get out, took advantage of those moments. There was maybe 2 or 3 places in the Northern Virginia area at the time that were open. And because everything was forced shut down. No restaurants are open, no bars are open, no Walmart's open. You can't go to churches, you can't go to work, you can't go to school. For those that are in school, everything's shut down, but you can somehow go to Walmart and everything's okay. I had issues with all that what was going on at the time. All the administration stuff that was starting to happen. All came to a head. We finally had an opportunity to go out to a bar that was open, a couple of them that were open. They started opening up slowly, some of them, outdoor seating only, that kind of stuff. Went out, and I was already cooped up, and what else is there to do? Go outside, work out, and then drink. Why I felt the need to do that, I have no idea, but I was drinking a lot. And before the accident, so this happened a couple of years ago, but before that, I was hitting it hard. And I didn't realize that.
So you think this was because of COVID?
That is all culminating, all the stuff that's culminating, that's part of it.
Hold on. You just did, 20 plus years in the military at Tier 1 unit. Then you did a couple years of regular contracting in the heyday of Iraq's, 04 to whenever.
Yep.
Then you did 16 years at CIA. And you don't think any of that shit had anything to
Oh
do
yeah.
with this?
Yep.
Okay.
All that is accumulative effects to get to this point, right? And really that time is, it all comes together, right? It all comes together. And I didn't realize how much I was drinking at the time. And those around me, I don't know that anybody ever said anything because, they like me, they love me, they're their family. They don't see those things and, hey, you're drinking too much, or you okay? Nothing like that. Yeah, I was drinking a lot. So my ex-wife at the time later on told me how much I was drinking in a day, and like bottles. I was like, and I don't remember doing that. I was like, I
Most people don't.
I wasn't drinking that much. I was like, come on. I was like, let's drink every now and then. But I was drinking a lot. Then cooped up and all these things. I'm trying to get restructured into civilian life in a regular 9-to-5 job, and all the years in the war zones, my I guess my meaning, right? That was what I was here to do, and I'm not doing it anymore. All these things coming together at one point. COVID shuts down. We get an opportunity to go out and have a few drinks with some folks. I do that. I drink way too much, and I get on my motorcycle, and I don't remember this part, but I get on a motorcycle and try to ride it somewhere. And I rode, and I was a good distance away from the bar that I was at. I don't remember any of that ride. And the first thing I remember was I'm on the side of the road trying to upright my bike because I just laid it down. Dark street, dark corner, on a street that I had no business being on. I've never been down this street before. I had no reason to be down the street. It's an industrial park. First time I'd ever been on the street in my life. I don't even know why I was on that street, but 2:00 in the morning, whatever time it is, as I'm going down the street, it's dark, it's not lit, sharp turn, 90-degree turn. I don't get it in time. I laid the bike down, hit my head on the ground apparently, based off of just all the dirt I scooped up off the side of the road, but the skid marks and all the stuff that was on the pavement. I end up getting arrested for a DUI, and when I finally realized what had happened, I was like, wow. And then it came to me the day after, because it's only, they hold you until you're sober, blowing in the machine, and you're sober, and then they release you. Go back to with help from a guy that we know, we go back to the scene and see the bike parts, see the skid. That's the first time I see the after effects of where I went off the road and where the bike landed up, pick up a few parts from the bike. And I was like, wow. That's when I was like, I don't even remember this. And, and I don't even remember drinking that much. But apparently I did. So I didn't try to deny that I wasn't drinking that much or anything like that. And my thing was a huge turning point in all of this stuff that's going on in my life to this point. It's like I just almost killed myself. I've gone through all this stuff in the last, lifetime to this point and survived all of it. And then I get to the point and almost do this to myself. It's not like I went out to try to do that, but I just almost killed myself. And I didn't want that to be like the lasting memory of me, of all the stuff that I've done, and there's other people that have done just as much, and if not more, but like for my family or anybody that's, thinking of me after the fact, that's not the way I would have liked to have their last memory of me. It's like I drank too much and I wrecked my bike. So that was a huge turning point for me. I was reaching out to some psychologists at work. They gave me an initial workup on TBI, PTS, so minor things on all that stuff. There's people worse off than me, but I'm not discounting what my issues are, because I do have those issues. The tinnitus and the memory, short-term memory losses, and still can't remember names that well, all those things. Slurred speech every once in a while. All these things happen, and it's getting better over time. And that's the thing that one of the first psychologists said to me. It's like, so I have to list everything in my life to this point, what had happened to me. And so she's assessing, brain injury and or potential brain injury. This could be part of the problem. And that's her thing. So I had two psychologists. One was the other one was, and then there was a specialist in brain injury. And the brain injury doc said, well, you haven't given yourself in between every instance. So explosives in the military, attacks on being on a base that's attacked, loud noises, mortars and rockets, gunfire, all this stuff to this point, combatives, because that's what we do, right? I mean, we get in the ring with each other and spar and hit each other and you fight each other. I mean, it's just what we do. All that stuff. I had never taken a break from each one of these incidents. And then the bike crash, my head against the ground. So that's how we end up with today. Imbalance issues. And I wasn't aware of it then. I told her about this one incident. I was walking and just going down a stairway in a restaurant, and I rounded the corner to the stairway, and I just took a little stutter step. It's like, and I felt a little bit off balance for a second. I was like, at the time, I was like, what was that all about? I wasn't drinking. I was just there. It was a meeting. It was a dinner meeting. And I didn't know what that was. And so I started thinking that kept happening. Just little things like that. It's like, and then also, why can't I remember this particular thing, right? It was just frustrating me. And I asked her then, I was like, why is this happening now? And she's like, well, it's probably been happening. You just weren't aware of it happening, or you wrote it off as something else, right? But now you're noticing now because you wrecked your bike and almost killed yourself. So she said to get it checked out, and I did. And so there are minor signs of brain injury, TBI, minor symptoms, and a minor case. I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. So the sooner the better. One, you got to change your environment. No more combatives where you're getting beat in the head from somebody punching you in the head. I've weaned myself off of being on a motorcycle so far, but I like motorcycle riding. So I'm going to get my bike fixed eventually. And I kept it unfixed just so I can remind myself what had just happened. That was kind of my way of reminding myself the direction I need to keep going. So, but at this point, I think I'm okay to the point where I'm going to get my bike fixed or get a new one, whatever. I got to get it checked out. Drinking a lot less. So I had one tonight, right? And I can do that now. I can be around it and not have to have it.
Yeah.
Or I can have a day at work or a day at all. And I don't ever say to myself, I don't ever have a thought in my head like, oh shit, I need a drink, right? This has been a rough day, right? Never say that to myself. I don't even have that thought. And that's pretty common. So in the environments that I've been in, it's a thing. It's the culture, right? It's like what you do. Yeah. And now you can't even go to a restaurant without it being in your face. I didn't notice that till I go to counseling, and I'm zero alcohol for a long time. I got hooked on Diet Sprite actually during that time. And I realized that then you can't go anywhere. It's on TV. And I don't watch professional sports anymore because they've got sideways into the woke side of things that I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't need that in my life.
You're not down with the woke?
Nope. So I used to think baseball, football, America, right? But not anymore. They've totally trashed that in my mind. Having, all that stuff going on in the professional sports. I don't watch it anymore. I don't have a favorite team anymore. I don't need that in my life anymore. I don't need to have a drink in my, it's never a thought in my head. And I'll go sometimes, and I say that to myself, like, I'll grab a beer. It's like, why am I drinking this beer? What? I can have anything else. Why am I drinking this beer, right? And it's like, well, I can have a beer, damn it. It's America, right? And freedom. But it's like, okay, I don't need it. If it's a social thing, sure, I'll have a drink, but to excess anymore, I think I do, and I probably sure have some people that can attest to it, but I have a very tight control of myself, more self-control over that, right? No other substance abuses. I've never had those issues, and I don't like even taking over-the-counter medicines for pain. So that was the other thing when I was talking about the psychedelic stuff. I was like, my whole aversion to anything medication, that's still in my head.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't know if you can do that when I was employed or anything else, but I really haven't checked into it. I've seen your shows on it, and it works. You've proven that on your shows and other shows that it's being publicized. But it's just not my thing. I'm not into any other pain, over-the-counter pain meds or anything. Even if I get pain meds from a prescription, I try to do without it. I don't think I've ever had any pain that I couldn't just tolerate myself and then just ride it out. Even when I had hit my head on the ground after I wrecked my bike. But that was really a turning point for me.
Yeah.
Actually sought assistance, and when I started talking to folks, Tom Satterley's, I keep forgetting that name.
All Secure
All
Foundation.
Secure Foundation. I reached out to him, sent him an email, and I said, hey man, I've heard what you were saying, and it wasn't time for me, I guess, to like admit it. I needed to seek assistance or talk to anybody about it. I was like, hey, I'm fine. It's like, it's normal. And it actually is normal with a lot of folks that we hang out with.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we know. So
It seems normal.
yeah. So what am I crying and complaining about, right?
Yeah.
So time and place for everybody's different. And I asked him a few questions, and he said, well, let me get you in touch with we can do this for you, free of cost, some counseling, a couple of counseling sessions with the counselor. That was great. I loved it. And mostly it boiled down to not just when I wrecked my bike and I almost killed myself, but while I was drinking and the times that I don't remember stuff. It's like, if somebody needed me, so I'm that kind of guy too. So I want to be there for people, right? I want to be there in the moment for people. Well, there's times that I wasn't there for myself. I didn't even know where I was. Yeah. So how can I be there for anybody else if I'm not there for myself in those moments, right? So, that was what sunk in with me. For my family, for my friends, for whoever it is in my life that's important, those times I wasn't there. And so kind of disappointed in myself for those things. I was like, well, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking about myself at the time, right? So that's kind of how I guess, came to grips with it, right? I was like, well, so commitment to myself to be there, to not get so shit-faced like that anymore, to that I'm worthless to anybody, including myself. And bad things happen, right? And there seems to be a thing, they describe some of the physiological things that are happening with alcohol and even a minor case of TBI, right, that are happening when I drink, and all made sense to me. It's like, hey, whatever it is now, roger that. I don't need to do that anymore. Sure, I'll socialize and have a drink with somebody, but then I'm not just chugging stuff and slamming shots of anything and those kind of things. Because I'm still in that, the culture. I go to dinner last night. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere in your face. So it's not anything that ever that I see it and have to have it. It's like, it's not like, oh my God, I got the shakes because I need a drink, right? I could see it all day long, be around it all day long. There'll be, beer in the fridge and a bottle of whiskey on the counter for however long it needs to be there, right? I don't ever feel the need that it's there. I need to have it. The smell, the taste, all those other things they talk about in counseling all right, somebody's drinking beer, I gotta have one, right?
Yeah.
Or things like that. It doesn't affect me that way, which good for me, but it's good for what I want to do with it, and where I think, I don't need those kind of things in my life because I want to be there in the moment for whoever needs me in that moment, right? And I can't do that if I'm drinking too much. So that was a turning point for me to just seek help, seek assistance. And Tom was pretty good about that too. He's like, hey man, everybody comes to this point in their lives where either something happened or it's just something that you come to grips with at one point. And it's normal. It's normal to have to seek some assistance, or it's normal for the damage to have occurred, like TBI, especially with all the things that we've done in our lives. All the loud noises, the PTS or something like that, depression, those kind of things, they happen. And I'm not like anybody else. I'm not above things happening to me either. So all the things that I did affected me the same way they affect everybody else eventually that they come to grips with. Nobody wants to say that, like they're dealing with depression or, suicidal thoughts, right? There's a lot of guys that are going through that. It's like, so I get it. It's not like I ever thought about that, but I get why somebody would say that. Like I've never been to that level of like desperation, but I understand it now. Just by talking to guys. So I've talked to guys too about what they were dealing with, and I was like, yeah, it happened to me too. I mean, you're not the only one. I mean, we're all in this thing, and eventually we all realize that all the stuff that we did, as cool as it is, has affected us some way.
Yeah.
And then different levels of stuff. But I get how I guess there's and we know people who've done it, unfortunately, and the opportunity, right, for all the folks. I'm doing a Mission 22 fundraiser right now. I do that a lot. It's usually like this month in September. It was 48 miles in September, and it's just a fundraiser for Mission 22. There's always something that they're running that I'll do it. It's usually a physical activity, and then it's just really awareness for this is the thing. This is the thing that guys are dealing with. 48 in September. I'm doing that. I think I'm done with that. As a matter of fact, but it's all those things because I understand now that even talking to guys, the time from a decision to do something like that, to take your own life, or to even end it accidentally, that's a short window.
Yeah.
You have a short window to come out of that, or it's done. It's over. There has to be something there in that little window of time that turns the boat for the folks that are in that level of desperation and depression and everything else. Even though they have people in their lives, at that point, there's nobody there for them in their minds, right?
Yeah.
And I totally get it. I understand it. But whether you have somebody literally in your life or, because like when I wrecked my bike, it's like, wow, that wouldn't have been what I would have wanted, like my daughter or my son or my grandkids to remember me by as the last thing. How did he die, right?
Yeah.
It's like this guy who's done everything in the world. How did he die? Oh, he drank too much and wrecked his bike. It's like, yeah, that really still gets to me. Like, oh my God, I can't do that. I can't do that to everybody. It's like that just, I can't do that. It's just too much.
It's fucking crazy. I've had incidents like that, several of them, and it's like looking back, you're just like, man, all this shit that I've done, and that's how it would have fucking ended.
Yeah.
2:00 in the morning, drunk on a fucking bike. Like, damn, that's all that. That's how it ends. And that woke me up too.
Yep. Yep. And unfortunate for me, and unfortunate that it happened, but fortunately for me, I was able to even get that message out of that whole thing. You know, almost killed myself. I have another opportunity to, you know, get my shit together and, in my mind, not let everybody down that way.
Yeah.
You know, 'cause there's some people who, life goes on. I get it, and everybody will be fine. But that's not what I wanted to leave as a memory, a legacy. Like, yeah, he did this, that, the other thing, this, another thing, and yeah, he's done all this other cool stuff, and then drank too much, killed himself.
Yeah.
Dumbass.
Happens to a lot of us. It does. It really does.
Yeah.
But, man. So what do you got coming up?
What do I got coming up? Well, hopefully this deal with Glock, I signed a deal with Glock, and I'm going to go to work for Glock as an instructor. And so I'm all about right now. I have done some things and I know some things, so I just want to convey that to, the general population or the law enforcement or the military or anybody who needs to know that stuff. Tactics, carrying guns, not carrying guns, planning life things, whatever it is, right? There's more people I think that can take away from some experiences, like Pete Blaber's book. He describes a military action, his decision and stuff, and then he talks about how that applies to corporate America, right? Which other people can understand, in that context. I'm kind of in the same kind of mindset that just because it happened to me in a particular military, the agency, or as a contractor, there's some things there that can be translated into civilian life for other folks to learn from, given their own situation and their own environments. How do they come to the conclusion of this, given my situation? Well, then, if this is your other situation, adversity is different for everybody. Timelines, deadlines people have at work. Okay. Not a big deal to me because I've dealt with worse, but that's their adversity. That's what that keeps them up at night.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? How do you manage your time around that? How much effort do you put into that before you get consumed by it? All those kind of things. But really, I like shooting. I like tactics. I think I have some fairly current, fresh, skills to pass on to
I would
folks.
definitely say that.
And I enjoy teaching. I do teaching, coaching, mentoring, training, all that kind of stuff for anybody who wants to know it. I totally want to do open enrollment classes for stuff, for all the civilians out there who want to just know how to be more comfortable with a gun. If they bought a gun, then be responsible and learn how to use it.
Yeah.
So just give them some tools to use to keep going to the range themselves and to get better at being comfortable with their gun. There's a lot of people that aren't buy guns and aren't comfortable carrying them because they're still not comfortable carrying them. But I've actually have some people that I've had dealt with training firearms, and they were not carrying them with them because they didn't feel comfortable with them. But now they're carrying them every day. They feel comfortable using it. They feel comfortable drawing it from wherever they're carrying it, on body, off body. And that for me, that's huge. It's like, well, good. Yeah, now you have a gun for a reason, and now you actually know how to use it. There's so many things that, tactics-wise, tactics are tactics. It's not rocket surgery, right?
Yeah.
But there are some ways to be more efficient at doing things. And that's all I would, be interested to say or convey to others that are doing the same type of work, regardless what it is. Military tactics, CQB stuff, shooting a gun, all those kind of things. Common sense approach to all these things. Like, don't make it difficult. That's a lot. I do see that a lot in some of the training that's going on, is in trying to make it unique to themselves. They provide something unique that nobody else provides. They make it more difficult, and they add too many steps, or they make it sound more difficult than what it is because it's coming from them, right? But that's my whole opposite concept about training. You know, don't make it difficult. Don't make it any harder than what it is. It's pretty easy, right?
That's refreshing.
Shooting a gun, right?
Yeah.
Keep the sights on the target. Don't move the sights. Press the trigger, right? And then keep the sights steady.
It can be fucking fun.
It can be, and it is.
You are
I
allowed to
enjoy
have
it.
fun.
Yeah. And in the classes that I've taught so far, that's the last thing I say, right? Is have fun. Like, okay, there's got to be safe. Downrange is that way, and keep your muzzle pointed that way, muzzle awareness, and learn something today. Open yourself to learn something today and have fun doing it. And, you know, it's the mystique thing too. You know, like, oh my God, you know, we're going to have to do some crazy stuff. You know, this is super secret commando teaching me how to shoot a gun. We're going to do some crazy stuff. It's like, no, it's not difficult.
Yeah.
I'll teach you how to shoot like a commando. Guess what? It's the same way everybody else shoots a gun. They just do
point.
more of it, so they're good at it.
Yeah. Well, man, I just want to say again, it was a real honor to be able to interview you, and I wish you the best of luck. And for anybody that's wanting to jump into your training, you are certainly a wealth of knowledge for anybody looking to learn anything in that sector, and I know you're just going to do phenomenal.
Well, yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. And I was describing how nervous I was going to be doing this because I'm not used to doing this kind of, you know.
Was it as bad as you thought it was going to be?
All and worse, yes. No, it was good. But, you know, how many people have been in the seat? This is an incredible experience, literally. I've known you from working with you and all the other stuff. But honestly, this is a great a program you've put together. All the stuff that all the information that you have, from infrastructure stuff to, you know, preparedness to stories about, you know, common stories where guys can, you know, go to school from. It's a great program, and to see what you've done, you know, over the years with this, it's great, and I'm just glad to be here.
Man, thank you
Yeah.
for saying that. I really appreciate that. But let's go get some dinner.
Let's do it.
Cheers.
Thanks, brother.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.